How's this morning?
Yeah, I'll take care of that if you don't mind.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, we're now live. I'll give it a minute while we let everyone join, and then we'll go ahead and get started momentarily. Another minute. All right, we have almost everybody. I'm sure people will continue joining over the first few minutes. All right, we can go ahead and get started, and then, like I said, I'm sure people will continue to fill in. So good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us this morning. We want to welcome you to our final CMFO Roundtable of the year. It's been a great year with a lot of great presenters and topics, and we truly appreciate everyone's participation in all of these roundtables, our presenters and attendees included. So we have some really great topics today and equally great presenters who we're so thankful are here to share their knowledge with us. So I know we have a lot to cover, and with that, I'm going to pass it over to John Mooney and John Reinhardt to get us started.
Good morning, everybody. Like Katie said, we have a lot of great topics here today, a lot of great presenters, and I thank them in advance for sharing their morning with us and putting their presentation together for us. You know, these roundtables would not work unless great people step up and volunteer to help out and help us with presentations. We are at the end of the year here. Hopefully you're all recovered from Atlantic City, and with about 3 weeks left to go, you're thinking about your year-end close and where you're at. And before you know it, your pesky auditors are going to be in your towns asking you questions that you're not going to want to deal with. But that's just the nature of the beast that we have here. So thank you for taking some of your time this morning to share with us. There are 3 CEUs that you'll be able to get this morning. And, you know, if you've been with us before, you know the routine. If you have any questions, there's a chat box at the bottom. I'll be monitoring that along with John Reinhardt in the background. We will interrupt our speakers, you know, when there's a pause or a lull in the presentation. Make sure we get your questions out to them in a timely manner. So just go ahead and type in your questions, not an issue there. We have 3 different topics on here for today. We have the shared services in New Jersey, like you can see on your screen. The first presenter is going to be Jocelyn Matheson. Jocelyn's worked in the local governments for over 20 years, working as a department director and special projects manager in Washington and Connecticut, and subsequently as a consultant for the cities and towns around the country. She's been involved with the state shared service program since 2018, when Governor Murphy announced the appointment of 2 shared services czars. She's also served on the Chatham Borough Council and is the chair of their Budget and Finance Committee. She has a particular interest in using technology to improve municipal operations and in finding bold ways to cut costs by regionalizing services. Without further ado, I'll turn it over to Jocelyn Matheson. Thank you, Jocelyn.
Thank you very much, and I'm excited and honored actually to be here to sort of share some of my experiences and my understanding about shared services in New Jersey, but also kind of what we can learn from other communities around the country on shared services. So I'm just sharing my screen now. And can people see what screen do people see right now, Katie? Is it the PowerPoint or is it the other screen?
It's the PowerPoint. It's not in presentation mode, but it's the PowerPoint.
Okay, all right. So yeah, I have 2 screens going. So one of them did not have the.
There you go.
There it is.
Okay, so there we go. So shared services in New Jersey does not sound like a very exciting topic, but there's a lot of interesting stuff going on with shared services, and I think a lot of potential for more as we go forward. I think that most of my background was covered. I actually started my career in local government in Bellevue, Washington, which is a suburb of Seattle, moved to Connecticut, where I worked at the Capital Region Council of Governments, which is a regional planning agency, something that New Jersey does not have. But New Jersey does have county government, which Connecticut doesn't have. So I'll talk a little bit about county government and how that can be a mechanism for shared services. I did a lot of work when I was in Connecticut on shared services. And then when I moved to New Jersey, actually, I met Nick Platt, who is an elected official in Harding and was appointed as a shared services czar for the state of New Jersey. So I got involved in shared services that way. I've also been on the Chatham Borough Council for 2 terms now. I guess I'm a glutton for punishment, and have been our budget and finance chair. So I'm pretty involved in sort of the day-to-day issues associated with budgeting in New Jersey, which is unique. So my next slide is just a quick clip from the announcement in 2018 by Governor Murphy creating this shared services program by appointing 2 czars to be the shared services czars for the state. Now that program came with no money and no funding for the czars at all. They did this on their as volunteers, and really all they had was kind of a bully pulpit to try and evangelize about shared services and learn more about the challenges that municipalities faced with shared services. So while a lot of people talk about shared services as the solution to the high cost of property taxes in New Jersey, there wasn't a lot of oomph behind this program. I'm sure people know that shared services has sort of waxed and waned as a priority for the state. It gets a lot of lip service, but it doesn't always get the support that it needs. And I do think that the czars pushed this issue hard enough, and it was the right time that they actually did build some momentum and help get a program started. One of the things they were doing was really trying to find a home for shared services. And DCA used to have a whole shared services program, a fairly extensive grant program, and some technical assistance. And that kind of evaporated, I believe, sort of later in the Chris Christie administration. So they pushed pretty hard and were looking for a home for shared services, and eventually found a lot of interest actually at DCA in the Division of Local Government Services, who actually took this on even before there was any additional funding for the program. And it's built pretty substantially since then. So in terms of where the program is now located, within DCA and then within the Division of Local Government Services, there is a division called the Local Assistance Bureau. And they assist municipalities that are receiving state aid, trying to get them back on track. But they also have a program just providing general technical assistance to local governments. And they built into that providing technical assistance to local governments that are seeking to implement shared services. The major change in the program since it started is that there's actually some money now involved, and actually more money than people are taking advantage of. So this is one of the main points I wanted to get across for this presentation, is that there's a significant amount of money available at the state for shared services programs, for shared services implementation. It's a competitive grant program, and there's 3 different types of grants that you can apply for. But I will tell you that most years they actually get fewer applications than they have funding for. And especially in recent years with all of the money from sort of the COVID relief money, which is much larger dollar amounts, people were not necessarily focused on shared services. As that money dries up, I think that it's a good opportunity to take a look at grants for shared services for 2 reasons. One is the potential of cost savings associated with shared services, and also because we don't have a lot of additional grant money coming in for improving municipal operations. Here is kind of an outline of the LEAP grants for 2023. There's 3 types of LEAP grants. The details are all on the link that I provided, and I'm happy to have share this presentation after it's complete, and you can go to the link. But the first is challenge grants, and the challenge grants are really for innovative ideas in shared services and the process of sort of exploring those innovative ideas, looking at how to get them off the ground. In general, in the past, a lot of shared service money has gone to studies that just sit on a shelf and get dusty. They're really trying to design these challenge grants so that they are for programs that look like they have a lot of potential behind them, but aren't ready for implementation. The second is and it's $150,000 per county, which doesn't sound like a lot of money, but typically you can get a lot of counties haven't competed for these. Any municipalities within a county can compete for the challenge grant, and all they really need is kind of an idea and a path forward to explore that shared service, and then identifying how they would use the funding to explore that shared service. You know, the more innovative and potentially beneficial, the better. But as I said, that challenge grant has not even been granted in a number of counties because municipalities haven't applied. Implementation grants, and there is a match. I don't have the match amounts on here, but it's quite small for the challenge grants, as it should be. Implementation grants are to fund the costs associated with a shared service implementation. So if you have a shared service that's kind of in process or ready to go or fairly straightforward to implement, and you need equipment, you need to rebrand your fire trucks. I'll talk about that example a little bit later. You need to merge your technologies. You're using 2 different software systems and you need to expand them, or you're using no software systems and you want to develop one. The implementation grants can be used for that. Implementation grants are also available for school studies associated with school consolidation, which is a whole other large issue that I can get into if people would like, but obviously politically and otherwise very challenging. The third area is the county coordinator grants. So there used to be this position of a shared services coordinator at each county, and that program, I believe they were funded by the state, and that program kind of disappeared. Some counties continued to have a shared services coordinator, but a lot of them dropped it. So this provides grants for a shared service coordinator at the county. They've improved this grant quite a bit over the last few years. It used to be $40,000, and the idea was it would be for a recent graduate of a public administration or public policy program, kind of an entry-level job. And what they found was that they need people who are a little bit more senior to be able to kind of navigate the complexities and the politics and the bureaucracy of implementing shared services. So we have, I don't have the exact numbers, but about half of the counties do now have these county coordinators, and the county coordinators are actively out there looking for shared services opportunities. And they can be a number of different types. One, it can be the county providing a shared service for municipalities. So we have some counties that, for example, will be the IT department for smaller municipalities, which is a really fantastic program, or will provide various DPW services to various municipalities. But the county coordinator can also find 2 municipalities where one is losing a key staff member, say a DPW director, and they want to look at a shared service for that. And the county coordinators can assist those municipalities, so the county doesn't need to be involved. So talking about shared services, actually, kind of contrary to sentiment, New Jersey has a lot of shared services, and they make shared services extremely easy compared to a lot of other states, including Connecticut and Massachusetts, where I've worked on shared services. It's really a very straightforward arrangement to do a shared service with a nearby community. And we have a lot already in place all over the state. A lot of the low-hanging fruit has been already grabbed, which may make it harder to find good shared service opportunities, but I think a lot of the big ones are really still out there. So some of the common shared services are facility sharing. So if you have a courthouse building that's degrading, or even performance space, a community center that has additional capacity, you can create a shared service that allows you to share with another community just the facility. Even, you know, salt storage sheds and sand sheds in Connecticut was actually one that we did quite a bit of. Capital sharing for a large investment. So for example, sewer jets is one. Sewer jets are really, really expensive, and most municipalities don't need a sewer jet full time. So you can share the costs of a sewer jet and then share the use of that sewer jet. Key position sharing. There's a lot of this already in New Jersey, but again, you're losing a good CFO, you're losing your registrar, and although there's some legal barriers to some of the sharing with some of those positions, it's also very doable, and I think very common to do that key position sharing. A departmental merger is obviously the largest and most complex form of shared service. Well, I would say the second most complex form of shared service, and the one that runs into the most political opposition, because everybody with home rule, they want it to be their DPW, their fire department, their police department, etc. But we do have a good success rate for a number of departmental mergers, and there is a lot of opportunity in that area if you lay the groundwork properly and if you can navigate the politics and the public sentiment around that. The last one example here is contracted services. So a good example of that in my own community is IT services. So we have a lot of IT services in the state are contracted out to private IT companies that serve as your IT department. And that's largely because we have so many municipalities and a lot of them don't have the capacity. It's also really hard to hire a good IT person right now because the private sector is paying so much more. So we actually have a long-standing agreement where Madison Borough, which is right next to us, contracts with a private company for IT services, and then several municipalities contract with Madison. So Madison can manage the company, they manage the RFP process, they provide oversight, they provide performance expectations, and then a bunch of our smaller communities, and even, you know, to me, larger communities like Summit are part of that shared service. So those are some of the common ones that you see. So shared services, I'm an elected official, and I can tell you that as an elected official, people don't like change, and the easiest thing is to go along with that as an elected official, because any change meets resistance from the public, pretty much no matter what direction you're going in, unless it's a tax cut. So it's very challenging to, as an elected official, sort of grit your teeth and move forward with shared services through public protest. In addition, obviously, there is a lot of pushback potentially from unions and from internal staff when you're doing shared services. That said, I think that especially with issues with property tax caps, expanded mandates from the state, and changes in service delivery, there's actually a lot of ways that we can turn what we as local governments are facing as experiencing as crises into opportunities for shared services. So some examples of what I would consider a crisis are new mandates that from the state that we don't have the capacity to fulfill. So there's regular new mandates coming down. I'll give you an example right now, which is that the state DCA has decided that every municipality in the state needs to accept online applications for permits, including online payments. And I'm a huge advocate of this approach. I think it, in the long run, makes things much, much more efficient. And the state has actually, they're working on a state system that people could buy into that would allow them to do this. But if you are on your own system, or if you're still doing paper permitting, which a lot of communities are, this is a big new mandate, and a lot of people don't have the capacity. And 564 municipalities, of those, maybe 400 are going to have to figure out how to do this, and they shouldn't need to do it alone. The next one is staffing changes. So when you have a police chief departing, a DPW director departing, or some other key staff member, if you anticipate that, that is really an exceptional opportunity for a shared service. And in some of the more politically fraught areas, if you have a neighboring community that is larger than you are, that is providing exceptional services, you may be able to see a lot of cost savings if you can combine services. And the departure of a key staff member is a good time to start looking at that. I would say probably 1 or 2 years before that departure is really the best time to be doing that. Changes in facility needs, and I'll have some examples about this later. But a lot of communities are experiencing empty jails because of bail reform, and they're also experiencing new requirements in terms of those facilities to make sure that whoever's in those jails is kept safe, is unable to commit self-harm, etc. So if a number of communities are facing the need for upgrades to their jails, and they are getting, I will say, maybe 1 or 2 people a month in those jails, there's definitely an opportunity to share services there. There are some hurdles, as always, but it can be done. Degradation of services. Many communities around the state are really struggling with EMS right now. And that is another area where you might want to look at a shared service. DCA is doing a lot of good work on shared EMS right now. In addition, similarly, people are having problems recruiting volunteer firefighters. And I think there's some thought that we're all going to be transitioning to a paid fire department at some point. And that's an opportunity as well to look at shared services, which, again, we do have in New Jersey. There's fire districts. Some of them work better than others. But there are also many very tiny fire departments, each of which has to have all of its own brand new expensive equipment, something that we're dealing with in Chatham Borough right now.
Hey, Jocelyn, before you move on, if you don't mind, just go back 1 slide.
Yep.
Just to talk about it. In the Bergen County just last year started its own EMS services at the county level. I know Morris County started it several years ago, and it was in response to the lack of volunteers in the communities and the lack of response, which I know initially was criticized in Morris County, but I think it's shown what its value is. Bergen County, I know, now responds to 490 calls a month from the county EMS squad, which is amazing. There was actually an article just this morning talking about the success of that program, when initially it was just, here they are growing the county budget again. It was not so. And actually the service pays for itself. And then as far as the jails, because of bail reform and because of the Bergen County's decision to not take the INS or ICE inmates, our jail was essentially empty. Passaic County was looking at a complete rehab of their jail, which is going to cost them, tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars to update that facility. We entered into a shared service agreement where we take all of their inmates. So now our jail it's not fully occupied, but it's significantly occupied. It was a windfall for us to replace those INS inmates. And Passaic County was able to avoid the facility cost to upgrade. So those are 2 great examples.
Yeah, those are really great examples, and they do show you there's actually a lot of money still on the table for communities that haven't looked at these. Another one that I didn't mention actually is an old one, which is the Morris County dispatch program. And dispatch is another area, highly complicated, but Morris County, which in general has not been hugely enthusiastic about a lot of shared services, has really got on board and was a leader in dispatch many years before I even moved to New Jersey. There was a lot of political pushback when it happened, but right now, if you talk to the police chiefs, they absolutely love it. Everybody's on the same technology. And in a small community like Chatham Borough, they used to have a dispatch officer sitting there answering the phone. And if a major situation came in, there would be 4 people calling at once, and possibly the person who they were talking to had less information than the person who was on hold. So now with the Morris County centralized dispatch system, that you never have that issue. They can provide specialized assistance. For example, there's certain people who have to get on if there's a health emergency. So you have to have people who have training on how to ask those questions. The technology is great. It used to be that, Chatham Borough and Madison, if something happened on our borders, our police officers couldn't talk to each other. And it was an opportunity to also upgrade all of the equipment. So we pay Morris County for those services. We pay them a lot, but it is much, much better than trying to upgrade our equipment on a community by community basis and respond to calls on a community by community basis. Connecticut has been trying to do regional dispatch for decades, and it always falls apart at the last minute because of a politically influential police chief. And so they have almost no regional dispatch and lots of little rural towns with one person sitting there answering calls. So yeah, a lot of good opportunities there.
So it's interesting you talk about dispatch. Bergen County recently was approached by Harrison, which is a Hudson County town.
Mm-hmm.
Hudson does not provide regional dispatch. So they came to us and said, hey, could we jump on your system? We said, sure. But we actually stumbled into, there's a little nuance in the law that if you cross county boundaries, you now have to ask permission of the other county to bless it by resolution before the town can enter into that shared service agreement. Now, fortunately, we were able to move forward with it, but it's another hurdle that's stopping us from reaching out and doing more shared services.
That's interesting, and that's actually one area where I'll talk a little bit more about the DCA and lab program. But the DCA director is paying a lot of attention to the shared services program. She talked about it a lot at Atlantic City. And one thing that they can really help do is identify and craft legislation that addresses some of these barriers that were not designed to be barriers, but are existing. And they've done that in a number of areas already, in particular with the courts. So this slide kind of covers a little bit of what we already discussed, which is the shared jails. In this case, it was Morris and Sussex County shared jails. They built on existing shared services, shared medical examiner, shared juvenile detention, and shared youth shelter services. And they're saving $2 million annually combined, at least with this shared jails arrangement.
Hey, Jocelyn, sorry
yes.
to interrupt. Just before we move on, I just wanted to launch the first polling question.
Sure.
And kind of relates to what we're talking about here. So does your municipality currently participate in any shared services? And then you should see your options. Yes, no, not sure. If anyone has any issues answering, just send me an email and we'll get you sorted out. But I'll leave this open for a minute and then share the results.
Okay, should I go ahead, or do we want to hold off on next slide?
If you want to wait a second, and then you'll see, it looks like most people on the call actually are responding yes, which is good because at least then, it's resonating with the attendees. So, all right, I'm going to close this poll. Thanks, Jocelyn. And then everyone should see the results. So 90% are participating in a shared service, which is interesting.
And I think that's a really important point, because the shared services are scary. And as I mentioned, they're scary for elected officials and the public. But once people get to understand that we're actually, many of us, sharing an assessor or sharing a CFO, sharing some of these more sort of back office functions, and building on those relationships for some of the more challenging shared services, I think it gets a little bit easier. Also, some of the smaller shared services will help you build this relationship of trust between your community and the community that you're going to share with. If you don't have that trust, the agreement is not going to succeed. And I think that that's a really, really important thing to keep in mind. I'm just going to run through a few examples, and then mostly interested in sort of a back and forth conversation about pitfalls, challenges, opportunities, etc. But this one was a really tough one, and I think that's a good reason to present it. Maplewood South Orange leaders were really interested in combining their fire departments for a number of reasons. And it's unusual to have elected officials at the forefront of a shared service because, for the reason that I mentioned before, the anxiety about pushback from residents, resident fear of change, and union pushback, employee pushback in general. It's just easier not to share, honestly. It's just easier to just keep going the way you're going. And in Maplewood and South Orange, they pushed forward despite an enormous amount of pushback and pressure. They definitely learned some things and made some mistakes along the way, but they got it done, which was an interesting example of many ways about how to overcome some of the challenges. So one of the, this is just this I believe was put together by one of the unions of firefighters on opposing the fire department merger and sort of denying that any of the savings that a consultant had identified were actually going to come to fruition. And there was opposition from the absolute top levels of unions on this merger, and also a lot of opposition from residents who, everybody wants their own fire department. DCA got pretty heavily involved in this. The other issue was that one of the towns was civil service, one of the towns was not civil service. What do you do with people who are just coming in and starting training? They both had training divisions, they both had fire prevention divisions. And so there were a huge array of complex issues that they had to navigate. And this one, I think, a good example, and I think that the South Orange village president would agree, is that being open and transparent from the very beginning about what you're doing and listening to all of the reasons why it's a bad idea is very, very helpful, as opposed to just saying we're doing it and we don't want to hear about it. I think that if there had been kind of more engagement with the unions earlier, this would have moved forward more quickly than it did. And I think that the elected officials would agree with that. But with the civil service, complexity of civil service issues, somebody from the DCA lab program took the lead in navigating how that would work. And I think without that, and pushed for some decisions that would allow that to work. And I think without that, the whole thing would have fallen apart. So now this is from 2022, relatively positive report on how the fire department merger is working. So it can be done. Shared courts, just to give you an example, this is an old one, but there's a shared courts in Morris County, and on the idea of turning a crisis into an opportunity, all of the courts in the state were required to put in a significant additional security, including separate entrances and bulletproof shields for judges, etc. And a lot of communities just couldn't absorb that cost, or were really balking at absorbing that cost. And so that was seen as an opportunity to create a regional court in Morris County, and it's a true regional court. It's not a building with multiple courts in it. It's a truly regional court, and I've been on the governing body of the regional court a couple times, and it runs exceptionally well. So what happened was Madison, Chatham Township, Chatham Borough, and Harding got together. Their administrators got together. They hashed out all of the details. They hashed out how the finances would work, and then moved. Madison has quite a bit of additional capacity because they have this gorgeous building with a large court area. So Madison houses the court, and they directly supervise the court employees, but they're the employees of the shared court. And the towns meet quarterly just to make sure that things are on track, see how the finances are going, identify issues. They had to replace the judge when one of the judges was retiring. That was a bit of a challenge, but they're moving forward, and they're moving forward well. The Morris Township was added to that court, and then right after the pandemic, Harding left and joined Long Hill, and that was for very political reasons. But you know, the court is strong enough that it was able to sort of sustain the departure of Harding. And there are definitely some lessons there in how to set things up so that you can add and subtract people. So this shows this was in 2012. So this was 11 years ago that the joint court was first established. DCA is really pushing for shared courts. And you know, there's the need for shared facilities, but there's also the fact that a lot of the courts are going virtual. There's a push at the state level to go virtual. And going back to that issue of every single municipality having to figure out the technology, having to figure out when to have their prosecutors online, et cetera, regional court is a big opportunity for efficiency. DCA fostered through legislation that allowed for these county model shared courts, and Atlantic County was the big proponent of that. And they've now created this municipal court of Atlantic County, which is saving significant money and sort of standardizing and streamlining the process. And as with others, you know, they run into some bumps, but they've been pretty effective in establishing this court, and they did it pretty quickly. I was impressed. I just wanted to give a couple of examples from Connecticut because I think that this is where we could potentially go. On technology, their towns are desperate for leadership and assistance on the technology side, especially smaller towns, especially with the cybersecurity issues that all of our towns are running into. There are stricter and stricter standards for protecting your towns, but there's still ransomware out there, and there's still employees who, despite training, click on it, and there are communities who get their entire IT systems frozen because of that. So there's a lot on computer security that could be centralized. Online permitting, I'll talk a little bit more about that. That was a program I sort of created and led in Connecticut. But since then, they've expanded a lot of their online systems for communities that want to buy into them. So time and attendance, VoIP, which is your phone voice over internet protocol, cybersecurity. There's actually a shared municipal fiber optic system in Connecticut. They have a human resources portal that provides sort of best practices in human resources and in HR records. And then they have a shared job portal. So lots of things, interesting things done by the Council of Governments, which was very, very forward-thinking in terms of shared services. The shared permitting this is the one that I was working on. There was a state grant that allowed, basically every community in Connecticut was using paper, except for the cities who were using very old systems. And those were just to sort of track what was going on with permits. I came from the West Coast, where technology is a little bit more advanced, and people were doing online permitting in 2001, 2002. So more than 20 years ago, they were allowing people to apply for permits online. So we did an RFP for, I believe it was 10 initial communities signed on for an RFP for online permitting. And we found one firm that would work with all 10 communities at once to implement an online permitting system and sort of help work with the state of Connecticut on some of the barriers to that. So not a direct translation to New Jersey, because we have a very strong DCA presence on the permitting system. But, you know, as you can see, it's expanded extensively, lots of communities signing on to that. Just wanted to go over additional assistance that's available through DCA in the lab program. They will conduct studies. So I mentioned before that A lot of people spend, $20,000 on a consultant to do a study and nothing happens with that. DCA has some very good staff, a lot of whom are former department directors or administrators who can help with studies, particularly in the public works area, provide political support for tough decisions. This actually was really key in Maplewood South Orange. Grant funds, which I'm missing the page on grant funds, so I'll pull up that website in a minute. But there's the money for the grant funds for LEAP grants, mentorship through the process, so assistance from DCA through the process, and they do a lot of work to publicize successes in that area. So if you're interested in working with DCA, the person who's really leading this program is Rick Ricciardella, who's a former police chief and now works for DCA. The Shared Services czars, I have their phone numbers there. They're relatively politically connected, so a lot of times they're helpful on that area if you're running into issues. And they're also willing to push hard for both funding and lab assistance. And then I provided the Shared Services link there, email link, and then my email link, which I check my Chatham Borough email link much more often. So if people are interested in learning more about any of this, they should reach out there. So that's kind of the extent of my presentation, and I'd be interested in questions or talking through any of these issues.
So I've got a couple for you if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
So what do you think the most common mistakes municipalities or counties make when trying to agree to a new shared service?
I think that the most common mistake is that they don't kind of line up the public and political support ahead of time. Sort of there's an early lack of transparency because people are worried about pushback. And because of that, later in the process, people can swoop in and fight it. And then it's very hard for elected officials to move forward. I also think that another area that is important is for shared services to look forward to how that shared service could be expanded over time, and make sure that there's also an exit path for communities who want to leave. Not all of these shared services work out. So, and sometimes it's just a political issue. So sometimes communities want to leave, and it's really important to figure out ahead of time, how is that going to work?
So I've often likened the shared service to a marriage, right? Some are good, some are bad, some need a little counseling. I know when I was in Wharton, we had a couple that were starting to fall apart, and I kept figuring how to get the divorce through rather than figuring out how to save the marriage, because you need to survive first. But I think that the culture of two communities is important when you put that marriage together.
Absolutely. The culture is really important. And unfortunately, sometimes that culture will change. So you do want to make sure you set these up so that they have that ability to, to either, well, they can either sort of transcend that change because the shared services are so integrated, or they can, they can make that change possible. So I will tell you that in Morris County, sometimes it's really the party of the elected officials in a community will affect how closely the towns are willing to work with each other and how much they trust each other. And so we've seen some of these shared services wax and wane because of that. As employees of local government, it's really important to try and make sure that you can kind of weather those bumps in the road.
It's interesting because the Dover court, which used to house 6 different towns, was bipartisan. Dover being Democrat, and the other ones being all Republican, and Dover was the host. But again, that one fell apart because Mayor Dodd at the time decided he was done, and he just killed the entire agreement and sent everybody their own way, which, that was a shock because everybody was working together, and it just fell apart by one person.
Yeah, it's incredibly frustrating. And I think there are ways that when you set up the shared service, you can kind of try and insulate it politically as much as possible. I think, most of these, if they're successful and if they're really done based on a professional to professional level. So it's the administrators working together and the CFOs working together. They're able to weather a lot of these political bumps, but they do exist, and it's just a fact of being in local government.
You know, one of the other things that I think is important to note is, you know, you may have two communities that get together to share, and then they decide to include somebody else later on, and the allocation of the cost was determined between the two. Now, how do you include that one new participant? Do you redistribute? Is it based upon volume? Is it based upon staffing? It's, you know, that's a tough one to do. And obviously the town is looking to find the one that's most advantageous to them, whether it's population or volume. And it's an interesting thought.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it's really helpful to kind of come up with early formulas on how you're going to do this. Sometimes state law or counties already determine that. So with regional school districts, which we haven't really gotten into, that has to be done by equalized assessed value by the communities, which I've been recently learning a lot about, because Chatham Borough and Chatham Township share a school district, and one of us did a reval and the other one didn't, and it's influenced a lot. But yeah, you do want to figure out what's equitable and what makes the most sense going forward, and you want to think ahead to if that shared service evolves over time in two different ways. One is, let's say we're sharing you know, a CFO, and then our tax collector leaves. Can we share a tax collector as well? Or we're upgrading our software system for tax collection and making it more customer friendly. Can we do that jointly? You know, so you can expand in the scope of the shared service, and you can also bring a new town on board. My major recommendation really is to try to have this done administrator to administrator, department director to department director. Bring your elected officials along, but you know, it's herding cats at the governing body level. So you really want it to be done more at the professional level, but continue to check in with your elected officials on what's going on so that they don't get surprised.
You know, the other thing that you can consider too, if two towns are getting together and trying to figure out a way to separate the costs, is bring in a third party, bring a neighboring administrator. Hey, can you look at it from your perspective? They've got no skin in the game. How would you break this up?
John, I take that one step further. When I have towns that are looking to do something, I see the easiest thing for me is talk to other municipalities that have the same type of shared service that you want to get into, because chances are they're going to see things where they have seen things that arisen that aren't so positive, right? Maybe there's something that, you know, one town was expecting and didn't get. So it puts more cards on the table when you can see and learn from experience, right? You learn from other people's mistakes. You know, I've got one municipality that covers 3 different municipalities for police service, and it works very, very well now. But it was very difficult in the beginning because they split the cost equally. 2 towns split the cost equally, and there was nothing in the agreement to say that, well, if you didn't spend every nickel, you know, we're going to split whatever is left over before you lapse it back to surplus. So there was a lot of hard feelings early on, and when one town, you know, made some concessions to, you know, to make it better for the borough, but you know, they never really explored, like, well, what do we do with the excess? So if the police aren't out there, you know, with a lot of overtime expense, and you have a lot of money left over in salary and wages, you know, where's the money go? So, you know, if they would have talked to other municipalities that had that, they might have been able to flush that out early on, and it wouldn't have been an issue from the beginning. But that marriage got off to a rocky start, but happy to say that it's going very well now.
Little counseling. So the other thing that I don't think anybody ever anticipated was competition amongst towns for the same service. And competition is good. An example for that one is Roxbury Township put a bid in on the police services that Wharton was providing to Mine Hill. And it became a very contentious situation. And ultimately the residents, you know, put up a protest and said, we don't want to change. We want to stick with what we have. But Roxbury is coming in, sharpening their pencil. Instead of having a dedicated officer in the town like Wharton was providing, and another rotating person, they're going to make them just one extra swoop in there when they go on patrol. So they're going to get less service, which is obviously they could produce for less cost. But you know, that competition was unexpected as well.
Yeah, and I have to say, like, I think that competition is not necessarily a bad thing. One of the reasons that municipalities are so slow to innovate is because they don't have any competition in any of the things that they do. So they kind of have to be forced to innovate by circumstances. So it's not necessarily a bad thing in the broader picture, because it forces you to make a case for why your shared service, your approach is better. But it absolutely introduces a lot of chaos into an already chaotic system. But I would say that, for example, with with our shared courts, their services are so exceptional. The judge is so good. You're never going to have somebody who's contesting a ticket, give you a 5-star rating for the experience, but overall it does go extremely smoothly. And, Chatham Borough is thrilled not to have a court in our borough hall with the parking issues and the people coming through and the security issues and all of that. So I think that it's incumbent upon the entity that's leading a shared service to make an ongoing case for why this is the right thing. And then it's an unfortunate fact that sometimes, as you pointed out, one elected official can blow it up, or people are looking at pennies in the sidewalk and they don't see the big picture for the small picture. But for all the pitfalls that shared services have, they really do present a great opportunity if you can get your elected officials to have the courage to move forward with them, with sort of the bolder, harder ones, because a lot of the easier ones have been done. They really do present an extraordinary opportunity for a lot of cost savings. The governor has basically said, I think in the past, there'd been a lot of talk about 564 municipalities, and we need fewer municipalities. We've had 2 mergers in New Jersey ever. One was Princeton and Princeton Township. And I can't remember what the other one, it was actually in the last few years and nobody saw it coming, but they do happen, but they are almost impossible. There's not really a need for it, because if you do merge your most expensive functions, which are your police, your fire, if it's private, and some of the other functions, you're getting the same cost savings of having one municipality, but you don't have all of the incredible complexities that are associated with your tax rates and who's a winner and who's a loser and aligning your assessed values and all of this crazy complex stuff that needs to happen if municipalities are going to merge. But I do think that there's great opportunities. And if you're a well-run municipality, even a small, well-run municipality, it can be a moneymaker for you to be a leader in shared service. I can guarantee you Madison is doing very, very well. They're the building department for Chatham Borough. They have a fantastic building official. This is another area that is really, really ripe for shared services. Nobody can find building officials anymore. For some reason in New Jersey, everybody wants a separate plumbing official, electrical official, mechanical official, and building official who does structural stuff. It's harder and harder to find those. There are some regional options through DCA for your building department, but they don't work for everybody. So anyway, so Madison's our building department. They have their trained building clerks who have all of the certifications that are necessary. They implemented the software for tracking and managing the building permitting process. And then they remit a portion of the fees, building fees, back to us. But honestly, just having that off of our out of our portfolio of services that we're providing is great. And I think that if you do a good job and you continue to do a good job, then you can kind of set the stage for that. When I was working in Bellevue, Washington, which is, it's a large city, it was a lot smaller when I was working there. Their administrator was going after all the shared services he could possibly grab as a moneymaker for the municipality. It was a really well-run municipality. It had great department directors, And they went to neighboring smaller communities and said, hey, can we do this for you? Can we do your dispatch? They created their own regional dispatch. Can we be your building department? Can we manage your IT services? And a lot of, can we do some of your DPW services? And a lot of the smaller towns were thrilled to have them take it over. They made money through economies of scale. The smaller towns got this issue sort of off their backs. So, you know, you can look at it as a business opportunity, as well as a way to address a crisis or solve a problem.
Hey, Jocelyn, I'm just going to jump in and do our second polling question while we have a break here.
Yep.
Okay, everyone should see the next question is your governing body open to new shared services? We got a couple options. I'll leave it open for about 30 seconds and then share the results.
And this is also an important one because there's an education and training component for the governing body as well. And that's another area where DCA is happy to pop in electronically or come to a meeting and talk about how about some examples of successful shared services that can help bring your governing body along. Both of the czars, I hate that term, will, you know, they'll pick up the phone and call elected officials. So
At least there were no no's on that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I don't see any questions from anybody in the group here, so.
No. So for those of you that don't know, Bergen County has 70 municipalities in Bergen County. The county has at least one shared service agreement with each one of those municipalities, whether it's dispatch, health, or anything else, animal control. And that's the county exec's goal, is to expand those services, which is when Harrison reached out, he's like, let's cross county lines, sure.
Yep, Monmouth County has also been exceptional in the shared services realm. As I said, so I'm in Morris County. I'd love to get Morris County doing more shared services outside of public safety. DPW, we didn't even talk about shared DPW equipment. Lots of opportunities there as well.
I think Morris already shares equipment. They've been doing it for years.
Yeah, they do share some equipment, and they do provide some services. So they are, the existing shared services programs are pretty strong. And as I said, the dispatch is really exceptional. It's really fun to tour their facility. It's like Star Wars.
I know that before I left Wharton shares a crack sealer and a line stripping machine with Mount Arlington. We just split right down the middle, so we both need it. It's not used 100% of the time, and it was a nice, easy share.
And that kind of thing is a fantastic LEAP grant opportunity because it's a low-hanging fruit. It's not complicated. It's actually more complicated than you would think, because, you know, what if one community breaks a piece of equipment? But they will purchase new equipment for a shared service. And so it's a great way to get a needed piece of equipment that you can share. And on that one, I would just say, make sure you work out an agreement on maintenance, who's doing the maintenance, who pays for repair costs, how you allocate the time. But that's another area where I think there's a lot of opportunity. We tried that in Morris County. We actually had a challenge grant for that. And unfortunately, the DPW directors were, you know, they were like, I don't know. I kind of like having my own sewer jet. And the consultant who was doing the study kind of said, well, there's no support among the directors. So we're going to just drop the whole thing. And I'm hoping that can be revived. But another pitfall, honestly, department directors, it's hard enough being a DPW director for one town. Why do you want to try and work with your next door town?
Okay. Well, Jocelyn, thank you very much. Great presentation, great slides. Are your slides going to be available to the group, or could you print out just a PDF copy?
Yeah, I'll email my slides. I assume I should just send them to Katie, and then she can make them generally available. Yep.
Sure.
Okay. Great. All right. Thanks everybody.
You very much.
Thanks, Justin.
John, we did have one more poll on Jocelyn's topic that I just thought was interesting. I'll just launch it briefly before we move on. So this one was, do you have any municipal functions that might be ripe for a shared service due to staffing changes, new regulations, or changing facility needs? I know you went over these, Jocelyn, and curious to see what people are saying. We'll leave this open for a few seconds, get your responses in, and then I'll share.
While we're waiting, should somebody wake Steve up? There we go. Look at that. Right on cue.
I've been listening. Actually, I've been listening and sometimes I'll be able to answer some of those questions, maybe interesting.
There you go.
You know, interesting thing about the shared services that we can talk about later.
Awesome. And folks should feel free to reach out to me if they just want to brainstorm or, you know, have any questions. And there's a question here. Thoughts on agreements that would allow municipal towns to keep a particular statutory employee. Can a contract be written that should that employee terminate employment with the provider, that the shared service agreement would end with certain notice? I don't know the answer to that question, but that's an interesting one, because sometimes it's because, oh, yeah, they have a really good assessor. We'll use them. And then their assessor leaves and they hire somebody terrible. So I don't know exactly whether that can be written that way, but an exit clause is very important no matter what.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so before we're going to move on here, but before we move on, the initial topic was the New Jersey legislative update. But in our back channel talk about things, we said it's probably better to title this as like a perspective of a New Jersey legislator. So with that in mind, Steve Oraho joins us today, and I'll give you a little bit about Steve here. Steve, with over 17 years of experience in the financial service industry, Steve specializes in wealth management and financial planning for high net worth individuals and their families. Whether in the office or at the kitchen table, Steve strives to provide his clients the best advice and guidance possible as he helps them grow, protect their wealth, and reach their financial goals. Steve is also a certified public accountant, which enables him to take a holistic approach and design wealth management strategies that are tax optimized. Steve and his wife, Rita, are the proud parents of 5 adult children and 10 grandchildren. I thought my shopping list for Christmas was going to be tough. He is also active in youth leadership community programs and serves as a New Jersey state senator, although I'll let you discuss that. Steve is a certified financial planner, and he holds his Series 766 life and health insurance. Proud to have Steve on board as a member of Nisivoccia Wealth. And without further ado, Steve, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, John, thank you very much. I really appreciate the opportunity. I want to thank Bud, John, yourself, John Reinhardt, and Katie Bishop for the invite to speak today. And quite frankly, you know, Jocelyn had a great presentation about shared services. Some of my presentations, I don't have a PowerPoint or anything like that. I like the way Jocelyn said elected officials as opposed to politicians, but I don't have a PowerPoint. But what I'm hoping to do here today, what I'd like to do is obviously, you know, talk a little bit about you know, what I've learned in elected office. Also, I like the idea we're getting continuing education credits for, you know, CPA and CFP. I like that. I like to, you know, talk to you a little bit about, you know, things that actually do get done. I served 22 years in elected office, and this is my 16th year in the New Jersey State Senate. I'll talk, you know, as I said, a little bit about things that did get done. I was in a minority all 16 years. So, in Franklin Borough and in Sussex County, I was served on an all-Republican board. I'm in the Republican Party. I served on an all-Republican board on the Franklin Council. And when I was in the Sussex County Freeholder Board, I was all Republican as well. So when I went down to Trenton, obviously there was a huge change now going into the minority. We'll talk a little bit about that as well. But what I really do look forward to is when I finish up, and I'll say, and please interrupt with any kind of questions as well. But I really look forward to the interaction between what the members may have some questions about. I'll try and answer them to the best I can. But one of the things I like to say is, one of the things I learned is there's a huge difference between elected officials and politicians. People will ask me all the time, why you, what didn't you like? Well, nobody likes the politics. Well, I would have to say most elected officials probably don't like the politics, and obviously you get consultants involved and whatnot, and sometimes it can get very nasty and get very difficult for your families. But the thing I really always did enjoy was the policy work. And just like, Nisivoccia, and we have a lot of people here in different, organizations, they're service firms. And quite frankly, as an elected official, that's what your most important job is when the constituent calls. It doesn't matter about party or anything like that. When they need help, you try and get them some help. I mean, to me, that's the real difference between what a real elected official is and what a politician is. And the one thing, when a lot of people are looking about going into office, the first thing they'll ask me, why did you ever get in office? I said, listen, it just kind of happened that way. And, I did a lot more praying than planning, type of thing. But one other thing I told them, I said, I've never had anybody, and it's probably the same thing with the, certified municipal financial officers, because people just don't understand, the role that's played, or the education and the requirements and the qualifications that go into being certified. But what I told, I've never heard somebody say to me ever, you know what, once I got elected, this is a lot less work than I expected. It's always a lot more work than people expected. And quite frankly, to do the job right, part-time jobs, but a lot of times they're full-time action or activity. As I said, I was in the minority party for 16 years. So quite frankly, the role or the power of the majority, I never really understood it, too much. And listen, I was when I went down to when I went down to Trenton, heck, I was nearly 40 years old. And quite frankly, I never really understood how important the majority is. And it's everything. Quite frankly, it's everything. Obviously, we got two houses. We got the Senate, we got the Assembly, we got 40 senators, we got 80 Assembly people, 120 people in the legislature. That's one branch of government. We got the executive branch, which is obviously under the governor. And then we got the judicial branch, which is obviously our judges, our Supreme Court, Superior Court, and then obviously our local courts and whatnot. But quite frankly, in the legislature, the majority, obviously, they really do elect the Senate president, and also the Assembly Speaker, and then the Speaker and the Senate and the Senate president, they appoint every single chairperson. And the majority party has control of every single committee. So a lot of times people would say to me, how come you guys just can't put your name on a bill and get something done? And then if you put your name on a bill, you can get changes and then, whatnot. And I said, well, it really doesn't work that way, because, and I've got, a number of bills that got done, and almost all the bills I had to get done on, it was done on a bipartisan basis. Because you need the majority. And what my strategy always was to find somebody, another legislator around the state of New Jersey, whose constituents had the same kind of issue that my constituents had, or it was just an issue that really affected the New Jersey in total. And quite frankly, a lot of times, if I wanted to get something done, I'd say, listen, you can be the prime sponsor, I'll be the second sponsor. And because to get through a committee. Now, listen, there's probably like 6,000 to 8,000 bills that are put forth in any session, and every session is 2 years. And the session, at the end of the session, anything that's in the hopper that didn't get done it's sketched out and has to start all over again, but with the bills that get to the governor's desk, they're probably anywhere in the range of 500 to 800 in that 2-year session. And so quite frankly, many bills that get introduced are obviously introduced for political reasons and never make it through the process. And the process is, it's, you've got to have a lot of perseverance and determination to get it through. Some bills I've been working on all 16 years. Some bills will go through much quicker than not. But you got to work. You certainly have to work with a lot of times with somebody in the majority to try and get your bill through. Now, just and the other thing is just understanding. And I'll talk about this more later, but the idea of laws and statutes versus regulations. There's a whole big difference, and it was interesting when Jocelyn was talking about shared services, and John Reinhardt talked about there was an issue where there had to be a resolution if one municipality in one county wanted to share service with another municipality, another county, so the county had to have a resolution. There was actually laws on the books that we had to, and where these laws come from, they don't get looked at, many times. I think it came up through the Red Tape Review Committee and that we had started. And quite frankly, there was a law in the books that said that a school district could not share services with a municipality if it wasn't contiguous. So we actually had to do another law. It was, a few years, many years back, where we had to do a law that said, you can share services and didn't have to be contiguous. So we actually had to take that out. And there's many other cases, like that. The other thing I would say is that, the budget process, there's a whole difference. In the Senate, the Budget and Appropriations Committee is one committee. In the Assembly, it's actually two. You have a separate Budget Committee, you have a separate Appropriations Committee, and quite frankly, they're not the same. I mean, what gets say budgeted sometimes obviously doesn't get appropriated or spent, or there have to be supplemental appropriations done that are voted outside of the budget. When I went down to understanding the regulatory process versus the statutory process was very enlightening for me. We started when Governor Christie came in. Actually, Senate President Sweeney and I, we had a bill that was actually kind of copied what Ronald Reagan had done with J. Peter Grace. At the time, I worked for W.R. Grace, which J. Peter Grace was the chairman of, and President Ronald Reagan, asked Peter to be the chairman of his Red Tape Review Committee, which was called the Grace Commission. So Senator Sweeney and I put in a bill to make one very similar in the state of New Jersey. Well, when Governor Christie came in, he actually took the bill and made an executive order. So we started the Red Tape Review Committee, and it was extremely effective. Well, we had Lieutenant Governor Kim Guadagno was the chairperson. You had bipartisan, so Republican, Democrat. You had bicameral, which was the Senate and the Assembly. You had New Jersey Business and Industry, Commerce and Industry were on it, as well as skilled trades. I remember Bernie Corrigan from the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers was on it, and we had other members as well. And it was, like you said, it was very effective in some of these regulations that would come up. So one of the things we had done and we wanted, and somebody said, what was one of your bigger disappointments? And I said, well, the fact that we never got that kind of committee, the Red Tape Committee, in permanent statute. It was an executive order when the current administration came in, and this is not just every administration is the same way. If there was, unfortunately, we need a lot of more courage on elected officials than anything. you know, when a new administration comes in, they don't want to call it the same thing as the other one if it had been a lot of times successful. So we had put together what was called the Government Efficiency and Regulatory Review Committee. It passed the Assembly and the Senate with every single vote except for one. And unfortunately, the governor absolutely vetoed the bill. So therefore, and it would, this kind of thing gave the opportunity for, you know, local governments, you know, school boards, business and industry to come and talk about regulations similar to the one that John talked about, similar to the stuff that Joshua was talking about, and gave us the ability to say, okay, these are idiotic things, let's get rid of them, right? Unfortunately, it was absolutely vetoed, and that's one thing I was disappointed. I'm hoping that the next session legislature, they bring it up because quite frankly, only one person voted against it. It was actually a Republican voted against it in of the 120 legislators, but unfortunately the governor absolutely vetoed it. Let me just give you an example of some of the things that actually, you know, got done. And since I said I was in the minority party, all these things had to be done on a bipartisan basis. We had, you know, a lot of, you know, in my career, I've tried to concentrate on making New Jersey more competitive. We all know how many studies are out there about how uncompetitive New Jersey happens to be, but a lot of business tax reform, like for example, the single sales factor, you believe it or not, the net loss carry forward for small businesses, believe it or not, in New Jersey. And the reason why I give these examples is because a lot of times people forget that, you know, we really do, a lot of people work together to try and get things done. And when you give them a good idea, we'll try and, you know, work it through. But in New Jersey, Senator Barbara Buono and I were on the Senate Budget and Appropriations Committee. And at the time, being the only CPA in the legislature, I said, it makes no sense that a small business who maybe an entrepreneur has a couple businesses and you have one with an income, one with a loss, and they weren't allowed to offset. So we actually, you know, created a bill that allowed them to have, you know, offset the income versus the loss and have a carry forward for for the small businesses. The other thing we just did recently with the New Jersey CPA Society, I think it was Senator Sarlo and myself who sponsored the bill. It was called the Business Alternative Income Tax. Remember back, I think in the 2017 Tax Act in the federal government, they had the limitation on the state and local income tax. And what they did, so and unfortunately that hurt a lot of our pass-through entities because they couldn't deduct their you know, limited on what they deduct on their income tax and their real estate taxes. So what we did, working with the CPA Society, was create this alternative business tax income, which really, and we got approval from the federal government, the IRS, and what they did was allow them to treat it as a business, you know, deduction. So, and it's been extremely successful in New Jersey. Bipartisan, we got rid of the estate tax. We raised the retirement income exclusion from 10,000 to 100,000. We raised the veterans income exemption from 1,000 at the time to 3,000, to now it's up to 6,000. Bipartisan the sponsorship of the Economic Opportunity Act. The veterans ID cards, establishment of public-private partnerships in statute improving efficiency and cost savings. These were all done on a bipartisan basis. Also, here's another one that we came up with, and I'm not sure it was the red tape, but it was certainly on a bipartisan basis. It came through industry, which was the licensed site remediation for professionals. It's called the LSRP program. I'm sure many of the communities know about it, but there was a 20,000 backlog on underground storage tanks that they just could not get through. And quite frankly, what we allowed was the private industry to help come in and get rid of that backlog, and it's been very successful. Another thing that, quite frankly, just talked about the regulation versus the statutes. Very early in my career, and I got to, and this happened on very much on a bipartisan basis. I don't know if people remember Commissioner Joe Doria. He was a Speaker of the Assembly. I think he was also co-president of the Senate at one time, but the time I'm talking about, he was the Commissioner for Department of Community Affairs. And I think it may have been the first or second year of my tenure down in Trenton. And if you talk about the Council on Affordable Housing, and quite frankly, I call it the Council on Unaffordable Housing. But there was a regulation where if there was a demolition of a house, that family, if they wanted to rebuild, had to pay a COA fee to the municipality. And there was a problem. There was a fire in Franklin, right in my hometown, and the family's house burned to the ground. And everybody thankfully got out except for the dog. The dog had passed away. And the way the regulations read, the demolition did not exempt out in cases where a fire had destroyed the home. So Franklin was, quite frankly, didn't want to charge the family, but they had to charge the family. And so I got a call and they said, this just doesn't seem right. And I said, not right. I called Commissioner Doria, and I asked if we could talk. He called me back about 10 o'clock at night. So that's why I tell you, a lot of times in elected office, it's not 9 to 5 for sure, but 10 o'clock at night, I was down in the basement so I wouldn't wake up the kids. And I explained to the commissioner what had happened. And he said, so it's not in the definition for demolition. I said, no, it's not, sir. And he said, you know what, we're changing that. And he changed it the next morning. So the family didn't have to, pay. He codified it as, in case of a fire, it didn't count as a demolition. And quite frankly, that's the kind of stuff that, that I'll always remember that as part of my career. And as I said, it was with Commissioner Doria, and it was and as I said, he was a very influential Democrat in the majority party. Working at the time, it was during the Corzine administration. Just some things that, as I leave the Senate, it's still, much concern to me. The first of all, everybody knows we're still very uncompetitive in New Jersey. We have a long way to go. If you take a look at some of the things that we've put forward, and the plans are there. The plan, we put, when I was a Senate Republican leader, we did put together a plan for what we could do with some of the extra funding that had come in. And I've always been focused on bringing more and more capital into New Jersey, or keeping capital in New Jersey. Capital is what businesses get to invest in for employment and whatnot. But the thing that we don't do, and the federal government does, and it hurts our residents all the time, is this thing called the indexation for income taxes. I mean, CPAs know about it. The fact that our income tax rates don't get adjusted for inflation. We're in the at the federal level. It was done under President Ronald Reagan, so over 40 years ago. The other thing that I think we could do is have this charitable contribution deduction. And I know I'm talking to my CPA friends here, but New Jersey, some of the research I've done, New Jersey residents are very beneficial. They give somewhere between $9 to $10 billion a year in charitable contributions. But when I got into the Senate, when I saw actually former Governor Cody, who was in the Senate, and Senator Kane had a bill that allowed to have a tax deduction for New Jersey, I said, well, wait, why don't we do this? We have no idea where all that money's going. Most of it, a lot of it's probably going out of state. And because New Jersey didn't give it a tax deduction. So I said, why don't we make it, if you give to a charity in New Jersey, and quite frankly, having served on the budget committee, the charities, obviously, they do excellent work. And they're always coming, every budget, and they have to come looking for additional funding from the state. So I said, if we give them the ability to raise money, we can help be a partner with them. It costs us at most 6 cents on the dollar. And quite frankly, we'll bring in probably, I would say, in excess of $1 billion or $2 billion back into the state and would only cost us a couple hundred million. Unfortunately, it's been hard to get past the Senate. actually passed it unanimously, but it was never picked up by the assembly because the administration, on both under the Christian administration and the Murphy administration, has been concerned about the pocket of government. And I said, well, we can't be worried about that. If we're going to bring in over $1 billion or $2 billion into the state, can't we give up a couple $100 million, and it would actually help our charities provide more and more services. For quite frankly, a lot of them we end up funding anyway. So that's one I'm going to continue to push on. The other one is the retirement income exclusion. Hopefully, like I said, we raise it to 100,000. I'd like to see it go to at least 250 or maybe get rid of it. The one thing that we aren't doing, and the shared services went along with it, and this was a big part of it, was back after the limitation on the income tax, deduction, or I'm sorry, the real estate tax deduction. I said to Senate President Sweeney, I said, listen, we need to have a committee that talks about, reducing the cost of government. So he did. He asked myself and Senator Sarlo to chair it. The late Senator Bucco was on it. Senator Singleton was on it. We had the CPAs on it. We had industry on it. We had skilled trades on it. Ileana Pintamaran, who's now the Assemblywoman who chairs the Assembly Budget Committee, she was on it. And we came out with the Path to Progress report. And one of the things we put in that report, the most important thing has to be the courage of the elected officials to do it, because there was no silver bullet. There was no new recommendations, maybe a new spin on some things, but unfortunately it was a lot of the recommendations were under the Murphy commission when Governor Murphy was actually heading that commission. So we said on a bipartisan, bicameral basis that these are ways that we could help towns and school districts and residents save some money. Unfortunately, the Senate actually put in a bill for every recommendation, but unfortunately it wasn't picked up in the Assembly. The other thing which I'm going to keep harping on is, and because they're always looking for new revenue, and there's so much money that's being left on the table. One, I talk about the charitable contributions. The other one is this whole thing about New York and New Jersey, where we have New Jersey residents who are, had been working in New York, working for New York companies that quite frankly are now, a lot of times like us at home, or in some other remote location working in New Jersey. And quite frankly, it's, and unfortunately, many elected officials said, Steve, we can't have double taxation. I said, that had nothing to do with double taxation. We give a credit already to people who pay New York taxes on their New Jersey tax return. I said, what it has to do with is being more aggressive and having New Jersey protect its residents, because if they're working from New Jersey and they allocate their money to New Jersey and not to New York, they would actually save taxes. They'd actually save taxes, and that tax money would go into our property tax relief fund, which funds our K-12 education, funds our senior freeze program, funds, obviously, as the fund says, property tax relief. So anyway, that's something I'm going to continue to harp on, because it's over $1 billion item. When I say this to my colleagues, they're amazed sometimes by New York's records. New Jersey residents pay New York over $4 billion a year. $4 billion a year. New Jersey gives an income tax credit, so there's no double taxation, and that credit is over $3 billion a year. All right, because you only get a credit up to your New Jersey liability. So anyway, that's something I'm going to continue to work on. And last but not least, and I look forward to open up for questions, but is this energy master plan. And that's not going through the legislature, but the legislature, could certainly stop it, as I've been one of the sponsors of the bill to help kind of stop it and be more practical. But the energy master plan is extremely, extremely expensive. It's also for our municipalities, our hospitals, our schools and whatnot. There's an estimate that, changing the oil burners from, fossil fuel to electric will be about what was it? I think it was $2 million per building, And quite frankly, there's like 10,000 of those buildings in New Jersey. That equates to $20 billion. So the whole idea of the energy master plan, listen, everybody wants to have clean air, clean water, but the idea of having, putting more and more focus on innovation and technology, and also not putting all our eggs into one basket, because if you think about it, in Superstorm Sandy, if we had put all our eggs in one basket, when all those, power lines and stuff went down, nobody, nobody could have charged any cars, nobody could have got to work or anything like that. I was just on a panel, and it was put to a question to myself, Senator Sarlo, Assemblywoman Elena Pintamarian, and Assemblywoman Ora Dunn, and the people in the audience asked, "Is the energy master plan practical?" Every single one of us said no. So even people in the majority party know it as well. But believe me, that's not something that's coming through the legislature. That's coming through regulation. And quite frankly, it'll have the same kind of weight unless it goes through court and gets knocked down. But at the same time, it is something the legislature could stop. I think one of the things that I got most frustrated on is the idea that the legislature is a co-equal branch of government. And many times I think that the legislature, does not, unfortunately, fulfill that role. But anyway, John and Bud, I open up for any questions you guys might have.
Yeah, right now, I didn't want to stop you because you were on quite a roll there, pal. So I know Kate.
Sorry about that. I know there's as an elected official, and maybe that's some of the politician coming out in me, that once you get going, you just keep kind of like a dog with a bone, keep chilling,
All right, it's interesting, man. So I know Katie's microphone came on and off. I think she wanted to jump in with a polling question, so you can keep that going. So Katie,
Yes.
if you want to launch that.
Thank you.
So while she's doing a polling question too, so Senator, I made sure I went and bought my new gas stove before they took that right away.
Good for you.
So this first
I
one,
know-
It's interesting, John, it's as people come to find out, then one of the things they're really, really upset about is that, well, they keep saying, well, we're not going to come for your gas stove. We're not going to come for your gas stove. Yeah, but you're just not going to be able to replace it when it breaks. Or you're not going to be able, or even to get it fixed or anything like that. But when people found out that they could be actually talking about the gas stove, that's when it really started to take off. It really did. And excuse the pun, but it really hit home.
Because electric stoves suck.
What they said? They couldn't, many of the people said they couldn't cook their Sunday gravy well enough on an electric stove.
Right.
The important there, or the big question is can the grid handle this? I mean, all the electric cars, all the electric appliances, it's the grid is not there yet.
John, that's exactly the question I got asked at the New Jersey Business and Industry, and actually it was Ileana Pintamarian who answered, goes, it cannot handle it, and people know it, and unfortunately, it's still. I mean, there are ways we can do it. Like, even if you said, Elon Musk, who's the one who probably sells the most electric cars in at least in this country and probably in the world, when they talked about fossil fuels, he said, you know what? He says, we need it. There's not enough energy in order to get there. And also talking about the infrastructure. But if you look at the way the innovation and technology would work, and we got to, I used to work at W.R. Grace, right? We had oil and gas and onshore and offshore drilling rigs, which was just one of our lines of businesses. And quite frankly, back then when I was the assistant controller, we would have reports on what was discoverable, gas properties and oil properties, what was discoverable, what was developed. If you look at today, there were fields that were owned by us. We would have never known that there was actually discoverable oil or gas in there, or that we could even recover it. With technology and science and technology and innovation has changed so much of that. When I was there, they originally thought oil was gonna go to $300 a barrel, right? $300 a barrel. What was it this morning? Just over 70, right? And at times it's been below 70, and it'll go, probably between 70 and 100, depending upon what, the oil producing countries, as well as, Russia and the United States, and if the US government allows us to expand our, drilling capabilities, it has a significant effect on that price. So, and look what natural gas has done for our manufacturing and for our homes and stuff. It made it significantly cheaper. So anyway, that's one thing I think we should do.
I've got a first question for you, if you don't mind.
Yep.
So the energy tax receipts dates back to 1884 when the franchise tax was first created. It was amended over time up until 1980, at which point the state took control of the tax and has continued to bastardize it and steal the money that was supposed to be directed towards municipalities since then. And actually, if I looked at my last calculation, between 2001 and 2021, they have diverted over $14 billion into the state budget. Is there any chance that that's going to return to local government?
Well, I mean, certainly. Well, you know what? I think our best chance was when it started, like last year. I think you remember, and I was the sponsor of the bill and stuff, to have the energy tax receipts go back to the municipalities, right? And quite frankly, I think it started going to state government under the Comptra, right? I think it was under Governor Whitman when they started to combine all this. Say, let's have everybody pay into the state, and then we'll divvy it up fairly to everybody, and we'll give it back to you. And obviously, that's never a good idea. All right. But anyway, that had occurred, and we had been putting in, and on both sides, we had bipartisan support to have the energy tax receipts go back to the municipalities. So what the administration did, I think last year, was, I think they made 75 million go back, right? I think that was right around the area, and they said we're going to increase it 75 million, in this year's budget. I think what ended up happening was they got rid of it. They made the promise, and then quite frankly, they said, "Oh, but we gave you, we took this away, but we gave it to you over here." It's the bait and switch that had occurred. And what didn't happen, I'm almost 100% sure about what didn't happen, was they were supposed to gradually increase to where it was going to go back, and instead of gradually increasing it, it got taken away. So I do think there is significant bipartisan support for the energy tax receipts going back. The issue is, and I think most of the people would say, okay, they do want it to see go for tax savings back to the taxpayer. You'll see that in certain bills and stuff there. Some bills will just say, let it go back to the municipality. And other bills will put on the fact that it has to go back and be, measurable tax relief to the, to the property taxpayer. But I think one of our best opportunities was, last year, at least we had, some of it, recognized that some of it going back. We wanted it all going back. It's gonna be, I'm gonna tell you, I don't have a lot of great prospects for it happening, because as soon as revenues start to decline, they start to panic and hoard money. You can see by how much money they hoarded this year.
Right. No, and you're right. And that was the big hangup is how do they guarantee to be used for tax relief? But the towns where the money was stolen from back in Corzine first and then Christie, those towns had to make hard decisions at that point as to what they had to cut out of their budgets to manage the tax impact. So you would think that they would be given an opportunity to restore any programs that they killed as a result of that loss of funding.
That was very true. Very true. I mean, when Christie came in, one thing, very similar situation with the school funding. When the Christie administration came in, and I was there, and when it occurred, I'd be serving on the budget committee. When Governor Christie came in, we had Office of Legislative Services come in and talk to us about what the budget deficit looked like. And quite frankly, they came and said, it's about $200 million deficit and stuff. So we're like, okay, we can handle that in some way. First day of the Christie administration, this is true story, First day of the Christie administration, Governor Christie barely in office, barely sworn in, gets a knock on the door from his Office of Management and Budget and said, it's not 200 million, it's 2 billion.
Yeah.
And the thing was, we were weeks or months away from not making payroll.
Wow.
So the governor had to make a decision to where could they grab some of this money from. One of the first places they went was obviously to school boards where they had those reserves, capital reserves, maintenance reserves, surplus, and those school boards lost that money. And then when so one of the things I had asked, and it never happened, but one of the things I'd asked, what the money when the economy, I mean, this was back during the Great Recession, after the Great Recession, right? When the economy started getting better, was to reinstate, let those municipalities or those school boards at least reinstate or get them the funding back from the state for the reserves that they had. Unfortunately, that never occurred. The only thing that they did was in jiggling around the school funding formula, they adjusted the geographic cost factor to allow more to go to the rural and suburban areas that we had been fighting for a long time. But unfortunately, very similar situation. But a lot of times at the state is do as I say, not as I do.
Steve, one more question. The pension. Obviously, they've been starting to make some of the pension payments. Do you see that continuing, or do you see that being another excuse in the future to balance their budget?
No, well, we did make some significant changes to that. First of all, I think it was Senator Sarlo or Senator Sweeney and myself. We put in the bill. Remember, the pension payment used to be the last payment made, and it was no money they didn't pay. And unfortunately, there's a number of people out there that used to think that, well, we could be okay pay as you go, right? Well, when you had 10 billion going out and you had less than 3 billion going in, that's obviously your underfunded went pretty quickly, and we got significantly underfunded. But we are back to making the full actuarial payments. So I do think and I hope that that'll continue. Now it's over $7 billion a year of a payment. Had the state government been making the payments over the years, that payment would have been about $1 billion, a little bit more than $1 billion a year as opposed to 7.2. So you really get hurt by not, and listen, as a financial advisor, the one thing I always tell your clients, keep making sure you put your money into, because the power of compounding is tremendous, right? So anyway, but here's some things that I think that could happen, like the state of New Jersey. The state of New Jersey program that is supposed to be where the state would fund up to, I think it's was the lesser of $5,000 or 50%, I think, of your tax bill. I think that's the way it works, or something like that. I don't think that's ever going to happen. First of all, it doesn't take place until 2026, and there are some what can I say hurdles that they have to get over before they can institute that program. One of which is they got to continue making the full pension payment. So
there was
I just hope they continue, but I also hope, John, that they learn they learn their lesson, because down in Trenton, it's been a long time. It's easy to make promises. It's hard to make payments. And that's why sometimes I wish we would have almost be required to be on a present value basis, where you got to fund your present value payment promises. When I first got down there, and the first debt report I saw and this was every administration before had done the same debt report. I looked at the debt report and it said like $40 billion. And I said, wait, it was only bonded debt, right? I said, we owe a lot more money. We owe a lot more money than that. So Senator Saul, I said to Senator Saul, I'm sitting on the Capital Budget and Planning Committee, and I said, Senator Saul, this isn't right. We should have every single, the unfunded pension and the unfunded healthcare liability should be on there, or else people are just gonna ignore it. So he and I did a bill, and Governor Corzine signed it. He signed it, it was great. And the first time it came out, it was like, wow, we're $200 billion under, and that was a true story. And that's, quite frankly, that debt report is still required today. It's issued every single year, and you can see the unfunded status. It's gotten a little bit better, but it's got a long way to go. So we got to continue making those payments.
So a couple of years ago, the PFRS was successful in getting their pension ripped out of the state's control and formed their own board. I know there was similar movement because I was part of that committee to do the same thing with the local PERS. But we met with a ton of opposition. The governor's office said absolutely he would never sign that bill. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, because that would be another one to rip that out of state control and have it controlled locally.
Well, let me tell you, I was a sponsor of the bill for the PFRS. Because, John, the one thing is, the legislature, the administrations, they're not fiduciaries. So they could, so when they didn't make the payments, or like I said, when they made promises that they know couldn't be funded, the independent board for the PFRS can't do that. So so quite frankly, I think I for one would have been to have independent boards on these pension plans, to me, would have been important. The other thing I think is also important, we need new plans. We absolutely need new plans. And I did put it into the, we had it in the Path to Progress, and it's similar to what the military does, and it was over in, they actually have this over in Pennsylvania as well. So we came up with a hybrid plan, and that said the first $40,000 of covered payroll. And this was for new employees, anybody who had 5 years or less. The first 40,000 would stay in the defined contribution, defined benefit plan, because we needed to keep those contributions coming in. And then anything over that, the new employee could invest in a defined contribution plan that they could help control. And listen, if you're a 24-year-old new employee, you're going to invest your money a lot differently. Hopefully, on an educated basis with good financial advisors, you're gonna invest your money a lot more aggressively than, say, somebody like me who's 65, right? And then you're gonna get the power of compounding. And the other thing is, I always hear this at the budget committee. New Jersey's got more millionaires now than we ever had in the past. Well, guess what? There's a huge shift that has happened in the private industry and stuff, and that's going from defined benefit plans, defined contribution plan, 401ks, 457, 503Bs and stuff. And guess what? Those assets in those 401ks, that's the individual assets. It's no longer under the trust fund or anything like that. That's the individuals that that's the individual's assets that they get to count, and they can pass along to their children. And that gets included in their in their net worth. It was one of the reasons why I thought it was important that we got rid of the estate tax and stuff like that. But anyway, that's what. So if we don't have these new kinds of plans, modernized plans, and we don't go after the cost drivers and stuff, unfortunately, 25 years from now, people younger than us, John, are going to be talking about the same thing. But they're going to be in a situation where the taxes have just gotten, way too high. Almost confiscation type.
Agreed.
Steve, oh, sorry, I'm gonna jump in with our next poll. Right. Okay, you guys should see the next one up. Is Trenton the capital of New Jersey? Let's see how we do here. I'll leave it open then share.
That's
Just
a great
reminder.
question.
Yeah.
I got
courtesy of Steve.
I gotta tell you, the reason why I did that is because one of the things I thought was so funny. I talk to a lot of schools and whatnot, and a lot of the fourth grades and stuff. And the one thing I always ask when we talk about the capital of New Jersey and stuff like this, and it's interesting in elected office, the one question that Rita would get when I first started in office was, how often is Steve down in Washington? And I would say, and she would say to him, he's not, he's in Trenton. Well, I thought he was a senator. But yeah, he's just a state senator.
So most
Nice.
people got it right. You should actually see the results.
I got the next polling question. So what is carved into the podium in the assembly chambers?
Carved into the podium in the assembly chambers?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Anybody else know?
I
Let's see if we
don't
can get
know.
it. Oh, it won't work because I have the background. It's the Jersey Devil.
Oh, the Jersey.
It's a wood carving of the Jersey Devil that sits and faces the.
I'm gonna have to go see that. You learn something new every day.
I'll send you a picture. I took a picture when I was down there.
Just want to remind everyone, if you do have a question, please submit it using the Q&A, or if there's a comment you have, you should be able to see that feature and submit your questions to our presenters that way. Thank you.
All right, Steve, you should have it now. I got a kick out of it because I like the Jersey Devil.
Oh, geez. That's true. I got it. That's great. Well, we know it exists.
I don't have any more questions for Steve, and I think we've completed the time.
Right, we had one last poll I'll launch just before we move on here. Relating to Steve's presentation, there are 3 branches of government: executive, legislative, and judicial branches. And it's up to you guys, true, false, not sure. I know you covered this at the beginning, Steve.
Yeah,
See how well they're paying attention.
I'll just tell everybody it's true. But listen, I just want to thank you, Bud and John and Katie. Thank you very much, and really appreciate the opportunity. And if anybody has any questions or anything like this, and please, you could always reach out to me through my legislative office, or actually through through Nisivoccia.
And thank you very much, Steve. Greatly appreciate it. Great insight. Love to hear the backstory stuff that you don't normally hear about. So really do appreciate that. I was going to ask you, but I decided not to, because I want you to hold on here for a few minutes. I was going to bring up the state comptroller, but I don't want to give too much away. We'll let John kick that off, and maybe we'll get your opinion on a few things there. So hold on.
Here.
Yeah,
Okay.
Steve agreed to hang in there to go over the first part of the next session. So.
All right. Yeah, I don't think you want to just keep moving on here?
Sure.
Get right to it.
Why not?
Okay, so here we are. The next section we're going to talk about is the readoption of budget and finance. John Reinhardt, Jason Gablov are going to mainly steer this ship. I'm going to chime in when it comes to some audit stuff, or if they want me to kick in on anything, I'm more than happy to join in. I do have Jason's bio, and I'll read that real quickly here. Jason's a CMFO and has an MPA from Seton Hall University. Jason offers more than 25 years of experience of municipal finance experience. Oh, I read that wrong. Yeah, 25 years of municipal finance experience. Currently serves as a township administrator / CFO for Mendham Township. Jason was a CFO for the Township of Milburn for 18 years and served as part-time CFO in the Borough of Netcon since 2000. He's a past president of the GFOA and past chairman of the Morris County Municipal Joint Insurance Fund. Jason is an instructor for Rutgers, teaching the municipal finance courses to those seeking certification as CMFOs in the state of New Jersey, and an adjunct professor from Seton Hall University, MPA program. Jason also has been a guest speaker for the New Jersey League of Municipalities Conference and the GFOA conferences. John Reinhardt, don't have your bio, but I could tell you that John's best job that he ever worked for was when he started out with Nisivoccia many years ago. Since then, he's moved on to being the CFO of towns such as Wharton, and is now currently the Bergen County CFO. What else do I want to know? What else you're a Harvard graduate, right? You graduated Harvard, magna cum laude?
Not a chance.
All right, never mind. Yeah, so anything else? Jason, you want to add anything about John that you think is pertinent here for his bio?
Not a thing. I think I'm allowed to say that online here.
Fair enough. So we all know John, and I got to tell you, the best compliment I think I could give him is that when something unique and odd comes up in our world, I do poll all of my partners, but I always think well, John Reinhardt might be available to answer this question too. Maybe he's seen it before. So maybe that's the best kudos I can give you there, John. So without further ado, John Reinhardt, Jason Gabloff, take it away, guys.
So I'm here to answer odd questions, huh?
Yes, you are. You're an odd kind of guy.
All right, so the first one, we're going to start off with Mark Twain quote, "Never let the truth get in the way of a good story."
You got your next slide on the screen as well. I don't know if you are in slide mode or.
Hold on. I don't know what I got going. What is it, splitting the screen?
Yeah, on the right-hand side, I got.
Yeah, you've seen the presenter mode.
Yeah.
Is that better?
And that's just the three of us now. That's as far as I can see. You
Try
don't
to
want to
share
see that
again,
for the next
John.
hour.
All right, give me a second.
Yep.
Oh, technology's killing me here, so let's stop my sharing. Is that better?
Same thing.
All right, we're just going to go with it then.
All right.
Okay.
What, Katie, you have something to say?
I was gonna say display settings up top. Try clicking that quickly and see. Yeah,
There we go.
that looks perfect. Perfect.
Good job, Katie.
Thank you.
So the first one is never let the truth get in the way of a good story. Mark Twain. Next one, we're going to go over what the meaning of overgeneralization is, right? It's a noun. It's pronounced overgeneralization. It's a way of thinking in which someone expects something negative to happen in all situations because of a previous negative experience. Also using a broad brush. Right? You never thought you'd be getting a vocabulary test today, did you? Sensationalism is also a noun. It's the use of shocking or exciting subjects, language, or style in order to interest the public. And you may ask why I'm giving you a little vocabulary test today. So we're going to give everybody a little video to watch here.
Did you know the Office of the State Comptroller audits and investigates New Jersey's local governments? And when we do, we often find staggering waste. A big reason why? The chief financial officer is not doing their job. CFOs help prepare the town's budget. They're required to be the guardian of your tax dollars. It's their job to question wasteful expenditures. CFOs are so important that the law provides them tenure so that they can say no in order to protect taxpayer dollars, even if they're under pressure from elected officials to do something the law prohibits. If you want to help protect your tax dollars, go to your town's next meeting. Ask the CFO questions. Ask if the CFO approves bills by text message without ever seeing the documents. We've seen that before here at OSC. Ask if the person who approves the bills is the same person who writes the checks. That's dangerous. Elected officials should ask these questions too. At OSC, we'll keep doing our part to safeguard taxpayer dollars. If you have a tip, we want to hear from you.
So now that we've heard from our great comptroller, I'm going to give you guys a second to soak that all in, because that just got released recently. So the question here is, does the video constitute slander? It would be really interesting if we filed a class action suit from CFOs as an appropriate response to those statements, because he's using a broad brush and he's using sensationalism to get it out there, to get everybody excited about it, and blaming the CFOs. It's an interesting thought, isn't it? This is a man who has ruined or attempted to ruin the careers of several CFOs across the state. At the last roundtable, you heard from Roy Rigatano about how they audited him in Palisades Park over the payout of sick time. The headlines ran that, Pal Park paid hundreds of thousands of dollars inappropriately. Pal Park then subsequently hired an outside attorney to review the same files that the comptroller's office did and found that maybe, just maybe, that one payment for around $300 was paid in error, not the hundreds of thousands of dollars that was sent to the media, and trying to use that broad brush approach to go after Pal Park and Roy Rigatano. Do you think that the comptroller sent an apology letter or printed a retraction through the same media outlet? I think not. This is an office that is out of control and needs its own oversight agency to rein them in. Another instance, the CFO from Mercer County, who many of us know, was also dragged through the media, alleging many things which ended in him being escorted from the building pending an investigation. The allegations were horrendous. In the end, the final investigation found no wrongdoing, yet the CFO's career was ruined over baseless allegations and a bad investigation. The comptroller uses his office as a bully pulpit and attacks rather than corrects the actions of those under his purview. Because I'm speaking now about this, you think I'm going to get investigated? It might come up with some trumped up charge. It'll be interesting to see. It would be further proof that the comptroller's office abuses the power that they have. We have Senator Steve Orho with us today, who I asked to stay behind, and I'd love to hear from both Steve and our audience what they think is a solution to this problem. You know, maybe one of the new things we need is new legislation to be crafted to rein his office in with a little bit more common sense and rules of civility rather than attacking people in the public. If the comptroller's actions resulted, and some of these may be, I have 3 suggestions here. If the comptroller's actions result in the dismissal or suspension of an employee, and the allegations are found to be incorrect or baseless, that the comptroller's office should be financially responsible for restitution for that person. I think that'd be a good start. If a public announcement is made and found to be incorrect, a public apology should be required through the same media pass that the original announcement was made through. I think, again, that would be appropriate. If the comptroller's office is found to make 3 incorrect announcements, I think that the comptroller should be dismissed immediately from that position. I think that would be a great start. Something needs to be done to create accountability in that office. I got off my soapbox now. But I felt that was appropriate to share in light of what's been recently issued against CFOs. I just think that was a rotten way to deliver that message, especially since most of the people that are going to look at that don't know what we do.
John, I think you bring up an excellent point. The fact that most people don't understand. Firstly, you're talking about certified financial officers who have a license and have put a lot of work into something. And quite frankly, it's when you talk. I was going to say the same thing with you. With a broad brush. I mean, one thing to go after those who have been proved to be wrong. And let's face it, Kevin is an attorney. He's not a finance. To my knowledge, he's not an accountant. He's a political appointment. I don't think I would have voted for. I think that the controllers law went in place just before I got into office and when the position came up. And quite frankly, I probably would have voted against it. I was had bills in that we have elected controllers so that it would be accountable to the people, as opposed to there's the controller in New Jersey, comptroller in New Jersey, reports directly by statute. And I had looked this up last night after our discussion. By statute, reports directly only to the governor. So quite frankly, to me that kind of video was very disappointing. I can't remember too many reports that have come to the legislature from the comptroller's office that obviously you see the newspaper reports or something like that when he issues something. But I got to tell you, the thing that bothers me is first of all, when you look at the statute, he's supposed to work with the local municipalities to create a plan. If they're going to have findings, to create a plan. Now, you spoke to me yesterday that a lot of times these municipalities aren't even finding out about the reports before they're public. That's a problem. That's a problem. And there is a part in the statute that if a municipality is not willing to create a reasonable plan, that he does have the power to go to the legislature, go to the obviously go to the governor. But let's face it, that paints with a very, very broad brush everything. And like you said, for people that really don't understand the process. One of the things I would suggest, Kevin, if you're going to make that kind of accusations against the local government, you should be looking in your own backyard, right at the executive branch and stuff, and look at the budget process we just went through. I know the Republicans put out a whole listing of spending that got put in at the last minute with no public scrutiny, whatsoever. So quite frankly, I would have to hope his statute He's certainly allowed to do it at the state level. Why don't you have something done there, and report that to the government? Anyway, disappointing.
Looks
Now,
like,
obviously, at the same time, John, if there's something, if he really has something that you know, a CFO or an elected official or somebody has done, then yeah, by all right. But you better make sure that you're not prosecuting somebody before you have all the information. Because let's face it, I still think in New Jersey, you're innocent until proven guilty, and unfortunately here it's the other way. It seems to be the other way around. And if you got a bad actor, go after the bad actor. I'm not protecting bad actors at all. You got a bad actor, go after them, but not with that kind of broad brush.
no, I agree. We have a statement, not a question on the board. It says, it's anonymous attendee, says you are valid and the comptroller should be removed for those statements by the legislative body or retracting those statements with an apology to the CFOs. I would be open to put a legal case together versus him and his officer. You know, unfortunately, the CFO from Mercer County is still without his job. He was let go. Was not let go. He's on administrative leave. But he had no job, no income after that, and they're holding up his retirement. And it was an independent review by Mercer County that found that the accusations were baseless. I mean, he talked about, you know, tens of millions of dollars in IRS fines. It turned out it was an administrative mistake, which all of us had probably run into at some point, and he had those fines abated because he corrected them. And it wasn't him, it was a staff person that he was correcting. You know, they insinuated there was embezzlement. There was nothing of the sort. But again, we've got somebody's career who was ruined over these baseless accusations.
And John and Senator, I think, you know, John, we talked about this as you were going through and adding this into the presentation. I think Senator said it, that wasn't the intent of what the comptroller's office was set up for, right? It's the oversight and review, but they're also supposed to be working with the towns. And yeah, if they're doing an investigation on a town, it would be kind of nice to know before it hits the papers, you know, and you're putting jobs in jeopardy. I think we're all in agreement on what this actually is and the way it should be handled.
I agree.
And what I'll say it again, if he really wants to, you know, go after some of the more, not the low hanging fruit, but a lot of the money that had, you know, went out the door, or wasn't spent appropriately, you know, in the statute, it says, state government as well as local government, boards of educations, authorities, everything like this. You got plenty of, you know, you got plenty of activity that could occur at the state level.
Yeah, I think everybody said it really, really well here. John, that was great. Very, very poignant, very, very topical to the point. I'm hopeful that, you know, the only people that are actually talking about this video are us and our community. I don't know how many public people are actually seeing this or where it's being brought. I know it was a YouTube video, but you know, my concern is with, you know, him riling up the public.
Yeah.
I don't like the fact that, you know, CFOs have to go through a rigorous exam. They've got a lot that is under their, you know, under their control. I don't think they need members of the public who do not understand government accounting coming in and questioning. I mean, obviously, if there's something wrong, sure, but it's a different language. We all know it. You know, we live it on a daily basis. This isn't the same as doing accounting, you know, down the street at AT&T or wherever, you know, any corporate. This is a completely different world, and the language is different, and I don't think public really understands it. So I don't think that they should be confronting CFOs at meetings. I think that's wrong. I think he's baseless in saying that, and he should be held accountable. I know if I said something like that, I'd have to be held accountable for that. So, yeah.
I mean, it's
Yes,
one thing. I mean, it's one thing to say that, hey, look, if you see something bad happening, report it. Yeah, or you know, there's anonymous ability to do so, and they can investigate. For that, you know, I wonder if the governor saw that video, And I wonder what like the League of Municipalities and New Jersey Association of Counties would think about it as well.
Interesting. All right,
Yeah.
I'm done with my section. You want to move on?
Sure. Oh, we got a couple of comments. You want to address those?
The comptroller wasn't just attacking CMFOs and CCFOs, but our independent auditors and DLGS as well.
Well, I'm glad you feel that way because I felt slighted too, but he named CFOs by name, so I share your pain.
All right, Jason, you want to run?
Sure. Okay, so
Well, wait, before we run.
Yeah.
Don't everybody Google that YouTube, because the more credence you give him, the more watches he gets, which is why I did it here. You all see it. But the more you watch it, the more relevant it becomes.
that's a good point. Just try not to give it any more credit than
Did we
necessary.
contact Google to take that down for ethical standards? No. Doesn't work
File a
out.
complaint.
Never mind.
Okay, so the rest of the session, and good morning, everybody. Sorry I was late for this session. Had another meeting this morning, so I appreciate everybody working with me on this, and John for working on the presentation and kind of going through this. So we wanted to go through the local finance notice that just came out 2023-21, which is really the readoption of a lot of stuff that we already do in a lot of cases. So some of this, might be newer material, some of it's just good review. So some of the slides will go quicker. Some maybe have a little bit more discussion. We all have a little bit of a different experience. So I think it's good to get some audience participation as we go through this. If you've had an experience in one of these areas, because there's some things in here that I actually haven't had to deal with. And John and I were talking about that last night. So I think it would be good to get some feedback. So I think the way we'll do this and what we kind of talked about is I'll go through the slides, and then if there's extra comments or some clarification, have John and John maybe jump in if I miss something, or if there's a point that maybe needs to be clarified. So I'll try and do what I can here so that Mr. Reinhardt doesn't completely lose his voice either. Though you sound better today than you did yesterday. So basically what we did is John went ahead and kind of broke this up into each of the sections by based on the local finance notice. So the first one here, updates or recodifications to the local bond law. And there's an interesting point in here that I don't think a lot of us are aware of, that you actually have the ability to request a useful life determination and go to the local finance board or go to the division and ask to have a useful life change. And sometimes it's necessary as you get into a project to realize, wow, it's a little bit different. Maybe this isn't really a 5-year useful life. And after talking and coming to some conclusions with your professionals, your bond counsel, your engineer, saying, we need to go back because we think we can finance this a little bit differently, maybe extend the bond issue a little bit more. So maybe it's not really a 5-year useful life. Maybe it should be 7 or 8. And that becomes important if you're doing a bond issue and you have multiple projects with different useful lives. If you need to extend it, maybe there's a way to fix that blend of all of those useful lives in there. So really the thing is, they don't usually let you go more than 15 years. And you will have to have a certification from your professionals, depending on the type of project, whether it's your engineer or your architect, making sure that the physical useful life actually meets the period of usefulness being requested. So I don't know if John or if you got anything else to add to that.
Nope, I'm good.
All right, you can go to the next one. The annual budget, I think the new one that came up in the last couple of years, I think we all understand everything has to be submitted through FAST now. Unless, of course, you still have to submit through FAST, but the division may, at their discretion, ask for paper copies. So you still have to have that available just in case. The new one was really what we have highlighted in blue, the enforcement guidance. on the consideration of arrest and conviction records in employment decisions under the Civil Rights Act. So you have to make sure that resolution is done and submitted with your budget. It's not really that big of an issue, but you should kind of go back and just read through it to make sure you understand what you're asking your governing body to sign off on. But that's been in for the last couple of years, so they're just kind of adding that in now and making it actually part of NJAC. And then if you have a solid waste district, that needs to be included with municipal budget submission also.
I find it funny that we have to transmit to the Board of Taxation when the Board of Taxation won't jump until the division says they can.
Yeah, that was actually an interesting issue. I don't know who else ran into that, but that was a little bit of an issue this year where there was conflicts between who had the budget, the Board of Taxation or the state. There's a little confusion on some people, so I think it's good that it gets clarified that we still have to make sure that we're getting it to the county board, but they still do need that state approval. So that just got to kind of stay on top of it and make sure that everything's getting to where it needs to be and the approvals are in place so the county board can go ahead and strike their tax rates. You can jump to the next one. Yeah.
I did.
Okay. You're ahead of me. So user-friendly budget, which I think everybody's kind of familiar with. The big one here is they're asking for or requiring a more detailed breakdown of absence type. Okay, so I think what a lot of us did would kind of normally do it by bargaining group in a sense. So you have your PBA, your FMBA, your DPW unions, but internally, at least I did it, and now we have to break it down a little bit differently. Is we didn't do it by position title. We kind of lumped a subtotal around all non-union. So now we just have to expand that and really kind of add those titles in so that it's done more by position and not just in those smaller categories. But most of us have that data. It's a matter of just how we were shown on the user budget, on the user-friendly budget.
But it's important to note that what they're doing is they're trying to enforce Chapter 92 of 2007 and Chapter 3 of 2010 to highlight the management employees that are called out specifically in those bills and force those calculations to be public facing. And then you're required now to hand that over to your auditor to say, hey, here, audit me. Which that's another requirement. I think it's at the end that the auditors are now required to review it. But we'll talk about that slide when we get there.
Not much different on the dedication by writers, other than really that last one. If you are using third parties, or you're not even third parties, if you're directly charging convenience fees, you should have you're supposed to have a dedication by writer for those fees to come in. It's a little bit different if you're working with a third party and they're collecting those convenience fees. You should still have a sense and some report coming in from them to know what those charges are. But that is now, if you are collecting your convenience fees and then dispersing them, those should be in a separate trust fund. I think we have a question in the chat. I don't know if you want to jump in on that. That's just John's comment. Okay. So water and sewer sales, and John and I talked a little bit about this one yesterday, but a little bit differently. So there is a process if you're looking to sell your system for whatever the reason. I'm actually looking at this now for my own purposes, to be quite honest. It's an interesting process. There's evaluation that would need to be done, and then a bid and a referendum. So if you're required to do the referendum for the sale of your water or sewer system, the certified results must be submitted to the director within 5 days of receiving the election results. And you also, or work with your clerk, must provide the director with a certified copy of the ordinance authorizing the sale or long-term lease, or the resolution authorizing the issuance of the bid request. So it's just a little bit of an extra step, but they're starting to see this a little bit more. And I think we're coming up to those slides that talk about the rules pertaining to making sure you're including your water and sewer infrastructure and capital budget plans. Because a lot of what was going on is, well, we can't keep up, so let's just turn around and sell our system. Depending on where you're sitting, it's not always the best way to handle it. Go ahead, John.
This just codifies what we've already been doing.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you weren't sure on this, because you don't always have to have some of these shared service costs, it's still kind of optional, but it's recodifying the fact that if there's increases in your shared service agreements, if they fall outside the rules for the cap exception or within the cap exception rules, you can take those shared service costs, but you have to make sure you have a breakdown from whoever you're doing those shared services with as to what those increased costs were, so that you can show that they're supposed to be outside the cap.
The next slide, Jason wanted to pull out because he said there's not that many county people on this call, and I looked at the list and we actually have a couple, so we're going to keep it in.
That was my poke at John a little bit from going back to that slide.
So what the origination or the origin of this one actually, I believe, came out of Passaic County when Tony DeNova, who was the administrator at the time, has since retired. I think he was getting pressure from his constitutional officers that they were blowing their budgets with no recourse. He lobbied to have this changed, and he was successful in getting it done. So the constitutionals are subject to the same 2% pressures that we are. In order for them to exceed that, and it's net of revenue, so it's not just a straight 2%. In order for them to go above that 2%, it requires an action of the county commissioners to approve that. And it becomes a public act, which none of them like. So that was it. It subjected those offices that you see here to that 2% levy cap, or actually 2% cap.
So this one, and I might ask John to jump in a little bit here because I haven't had to really do this, but basically,
You want me to just run?
yeah, go ahead.
So the Water Quality Accountability Act was approved a couple of years ago, and what it essentially did is they were finding that people that are towns that had operated their own water systems were not paying attention to their water systems, which ended up in them then selling those water systems because it got so far behind that they just couldn't get ahead of it. So they have a private company come in and run it, and they would reap the benefit of whatever revenue they took in. But this one is unique because it requires them, a town, to come up with an inventory of all their system assets, and they have to publish that in their water quality accountability report. And there's an annual report that has to be filed. But what they're saying here is that your budget has to match what you've now done with that report, saying, hey, here's my 1 to 6 year improvement plan. Now, it doesn't say may, it says it shall be incorporated into your capital plan, and it has to match somewhere in here. Maybe it's the next page. Oh, it's the next page. So I'm going to skip down since we're doing this. And it says here that the type of assets, the project name, and comments in the WQAA annual report must match word for word in your capital plan. So now they're clamping down and saying, hey, you have to do this. And not only do you have to do it here, but you now submit this with your budget, and you have to submit to DEP so they know what you're doing. So it's a little bit of a handcuffs based upon what they've been seeing with people with their water systems, which is now why any referendum for a water sale, all that stuff is now has to go to the director. So now they're going to keep their eyes on you. It's a little bit of a short explanation, but that's what it is.
I think not much needs to be said here on certification of funds. I think everybody's familiar with this. I think the big thing is when you certify your funds, you're supposed to be including in your flexible chart of accounts codes. That way there's a tie back to the actual budget, and it's not just generic in terms of I'm making $21,000 available, or I'm approving the $21,000 and the funds are available. It's got to tie back to whether it's the department or the bond ordinance in the actual FCOA codes.
Well, and the other part here is they're saying that you have to use it with your budget, your audit, any other financial statements you submit to them. I mean, we jokingly call it the division's inflexible chart of accounts because it's been set for us. There's no flexibility, but the ability to report on it is actually pretty robust if you put it in place the correct way. I mean, the only thing that's subject to our purview is the object codes at the end. The rest has all been set for us. This one I thought was interesting.
I found this one very interesting too.
Says
that-
it's no longer allowed to have pre-printed purchase orders with the sequential numbers, that it has to come from your computerized system.
Yeah, so I think there still might be a handful of towns that are doing the old school, and some of that is just, it's not always easy for some of the smaller towns to get the technology and the cost to incorporate to get to this point. But yeah, at this point, everybody needs to move to their accounting systems to do their sequentially and pre-numbered purchase orders.
But not that many people are manual, but this is you have to.
Correct.
It requires you to go to a computerized system. What if
Yeah.
you don't have one? That's a mandate.
Yep.
That's a little bit overreaching. Got this one?
Go ahead.
No, I said you got this one.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody understands, and this has been out there for a while, and it's just a recodification under the technical accounting directives that you need to have a general ledger, and now for all funds, not just your current fund, right? When the technical accounting directives first came out, it was a general ledger just around your current fund. Now it includes everything, but it also throws in and making sure local authorities, fire districts, joint meetings, everybody is now on the same page that you have to have a general ledger for all funds.
So interestingly enough, you referred to the technical accounting directives. They were unenforceable the way they were
Yeah.
put in place, which is why they subsequently codified them.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's a couple bullet points here. It does change a little bit of how we do some things from an audit perspective. I won't get you down into the gory details, but the biggest one for us as auditors is the second bullet point there. Allowing us to use the most recent GASB 68 and 75 information rather than wait. We do have a few municipal entities that require this to run through the report. Certain districts, fire districts, and you have to sit and you have to wait until that information becomes available before you can go ahead and issue the audit, even if you've done the audit 4 months ago, 5 months ago. And it's the state of New Jersey that's always behind on this. And I know we've been piling on the state comptroller, but the state pension has been behind on this historically year after year. And some of those reports don't go out until August, September. And, you know, if we could use the information that's on hand, then we could run those numbers through the report. It's kind of making this more of a common sense approach finally. And now we can use what's available rather than wait, because what good is an audit to you if it's older than 6 months old? You know, what good is it for you to get something in August or September, and then you have 3 months to make corrections to any recommendations that you have, to maybe go back and fix some things that you might not have noticed on your year-end balance sheet. So this one's kind of important to us. This does do a couple other things as well. This does, it updates the references for the single audit for us, and it codifies that solid waste collection with the municipal audit submission as well. And we saw that back on the budget slide. It's doing the same thing for the budget when you have a solid waste collection district. You want to hit the next one? Okay. So this just goes in to tell you that when you're going to need your submission of your audit synopsis and the group affidavit. It tells you where it's available now. It's up on the municipal and county budget webpage. And then it goes into a little more detail about what's required in the synopsis. If we go to the next slide. All right, so similar to before, comparative balance sheet, comparative statement of revenue and expenses. This is what we put together when we're finalized with the audit. You know, I can't speak on behalf of other accounting firms. I can only tell you how we do it. You know, we always send out the draft first so that we can have a discussion on the draft before we get the final blessing to go ahead and issue the final copy. And once we know that the numbers are no longer going to change, that's when we wind up we administratively put together this synopsis of audit for you. We issue it to you in the box. It used to be in the box. Now it comes in through PDF format. Again, there's a page on there that takes care of all comments and recommendations as well. Even if you don't have any, that's still included. And now there's also a breakout in case there's any single audit comments that you have as well. It's a separate type of reporting packet. I think that's on the next page though. So if you want to flip to the next one there. Well, this tells you when the information is due, 30 days that the synopsis needs to be issued 30 days after receipt of audit, where it's supposed to be published. If you don't have a local newspaper, which I don't know of any, I have some smaller towns as well, and everybody seems to have their own newspaper, but if it's not, you have to publish it within a newspaper that's in circulation of where you're at, municipality-wise. The other fun, this one I thought was kind of interesting, the last bullet point on that page. If you fail to issue the synopsis within 30 days of the deadline, the clerk is fined personally $10 a day for every day late. And not only are they fined, but the fine gets sent back to the municipality. So, you know, if you're 2 days late, you owe your town 20 bucks is what they're saying. We've seen fines with the AFS, like $5 a day since going back to as far as I can remember. And John, I mean, you've been doing this longer than I have, but I've never seen any of those fines ever followed up upon.
No.
Even for a couple of days late. So nice to put in there, a little bit of puts a little skin in the game, but other than that, I wouldn't worry about it too much. Just get them out in 30 days. Local finance notice, corrective action plan. Yeah, here's the one with the, you know, you have to have a corrective action plan for both any recommendations that you have, and then a separate corrective action plan now for any single audit recommendations or findings that you may have. A single audit, if you don't know, it's a grant specific audit. There is a trigger of expenditures that you have to hit. So if you spend over $750,000 in federal grants or state grants separately, it triggers a single audit, and there's grant specific testing to do. I was on a webinar on Tuesday, and in that webinar, there is talks of increasing the federal number to at least $1 million. So hopefully they do that. Gives you a little more room. You don't want to trigger a single audit if you don't have to. It's more work for the auditors, but it is what it is. Other information on there. Yep, keep going. What you need to put up onto FAST, right? What we need to put up onto FAST. So when our audit is done, you know, what do we file? We have a nice internal checklist through our admin here. We upload the items that we need to upload. We do this on an annual basis. Again, send it out to all of our clients with the audit. I like to send the audit in one email and then all the transmittal documents in a separate email. And in there, it's an instruction sheet of what you need to upload onto FAST for the audit in that portal as a CFO. So, you know, I wouldn't go too crazy here because I offer a lot of insight when this time comes. We'll make sure that you have everything up on the FAST portal. Before you go to that, John, just there was a little bit more information in there in the audit, and it went into, it's not on the slide, but it's in the local finance notice. It pertains to, it was on
Confidential reports.
I lost it. What was that? Confidential reports. Yes.
I've had the
confidential. And I thought it was topical only because, you know, if you hear something, say something, you know, as a member of the public, to go after the CFO, and that's all great. But as auditors, if something comes up where it is not passing the smell test, we have a mechanism in which we report it. It's called a special confidential report, and we go ahead and we, you know, within 48 hours of finding something that just is not right, we have to issue a special confidential report, put the insurance company on notice, your governing body on notice, the DLGS on notice. In my career, I've written 4 or 5 of these. 2 of them revolving around a certain tax collector that won't be named. And you have to follow up. The auditors have to do the work to follow up on what it is. But the second letter that they follow up on just gives an amount. It doesn't say that, here's, they're guilty or they're innocent. It's nothing like that. It's just, here's the amount in question. So the first one says, well, there might be a problem with some cash missing. The second letter has to be followed up on with how much. And then finally, there's a third letter when everything is all said and done, and you have to tell them what the outcome of the investigation was or how the case ended. So there is a mechanism in which to do that. The public doesn't need to come to governing body meetings with pitchforks and torches and asking all kinds of questions from the CFO. We are more than capable of doing our own investigations and getting down to them. So with that, you want to move on to the next one?
Yeah, the next one talks about what makes you ineligible for local examination. Obviously, if you're a transitional aid municipality, you're subject to the state's review. You're actually under a microscope. The other one actually triggers because they've been having a problem getting people to submit their user-friendly budgets. So if you have not submitted the prior year, you're disqualified. You're under their thumb now.
Sorry, John, go ahead.
Temporary CFOs or using a private company triggers that you're ineligible. You have to have the state review your budget. If you're going to sell your water or sewer system, you're now ineligible because they want to look at that now. It also talks about the Water Infrastructure Protection Act, which is also the sale of the system. So those are things that would trigger you being ineligible for local examination.
John, is it still, if you had a COVID emergency that's still on your books, are you still ineligible as well?
I don't know that one.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure on that one either.
So the surety bond one is interesting because it used to be that it was the treasurer subject to the surety bond, not necessarily the CFO. And now they've encapsulated everybody in and set new minimums. So now it allows the CFO, tax collectors, judges, court administrators to be covered by a blanket bond, not individual bonds. And I know that the GIFs have been issuing those as blankets, which makes it a lot cheaper for everybody. But then they came up with this new calculation that it's supposed to be, 10% of the municipality or county's total revenues, inclusive of pilots, utilities. So what they want you to do is aggregate all of your potential, what you control in cash. And it's 10% of that is your bond, which includes trust funds, includes capital. So it becomes bigger and bigger of a nut. And you're better off getting a bond that exceeds that. And you have to revisit it every year if you have a change in your funding. Now, what's interesting is we all went through that funny money with ARP. Is that supposed to be included? Because that truly is revenue coming through your budget. So you had a 1-year blip that's going to throw you way over your numbers, and then you're going to come back down. There should be some averaging or some common sense to go that, because it just doesn't make sense to have that one big of a blip. And in the back of the local finance notes, they give you the new chart on what the amounts are for those bonds. This is how to calculate. It just talks about, if you're a tax collector, it's not just what's in the duplicate, because you have pilot money coming into, if they're collecting it, that's also subject to those calculations. And obviously, they're going to put the onus on the auditors again to come in and prove that you've got your bonds in place and that they're appropriately sized. The next one's interesting, and I didn't get a chance to actually look up the administrative code for this, but they've updated the outside detail. There was the old local finance notice was from 2000, which put the rules in place. It said that you couldn't charge the outside detail to your budget because it was not intended for the public to pay for those functions. That it had to be a trust fund that was posted in advance, and that's how you charge it. But I do know that there was some attention, and I think it was one of the trades was trying to get the calculation of the administrative fee revisited because they felt that they were being abused in the process. So I think this goes and fine tunes a little bit of that. Again, I didn't read it, but they're going to send out a new updated local finance notice at some point.
John, we want to get a polling question here.
Sure. Oh, the first one would have been appropriate a long time ago, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I'll jump in now. Going back, right, John said to the beginning a little bit. Do you feel the comptroller's office needs oversight?
We should have had an absolutely in there too.
Yeah.
If anybody answers no, John, we need to not make this anonymous anymore.
Okay. Well, luckily, it looks like we got 100% yes. So you guys have quite the case there. There you go.
Excellent.
Great. Thank you, guys.
Sorry, John.
Oh, you're good. We should actually, you want to just throw a second one up now already? Because we're almost to the end.
Sure.
We'll get a
Yep.
couple, or you want to go a couple more slides?
Yeah, we can go a couple more. I'll do it closer to the end.
So, stormwater utility reports, if you've established a stormwater utility, you have to make sure that that report and budget goes to both the division and DEP. Right, so it's becomes part of the full record so that DEP also knows what you're doing with your stormwater utility. I'd just be curious if anybody's actually created a stormwater utility yet.
You know, Katie, can we put a question up just asking? Because I know the state's been pushing, they want this to happen, which is called the rain tax, right? It's, if it rains, you're gonna tax them for their impervious coverage.
Let me add one in. Sorry, can you just give me the question?
Just, has anybody formed a stormwater utility?
I'll throw it up in 1 second.
And they push it hard. It's become the best practice question, which is crazy. I think the first one they used, it was scored question, which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's just another form of a tax.
Okay, I'm gonna put that one up now.
And the interesting part is because we have all the roads, all of our impervious coverage, do we get taxed for our unimpervious coverage? And if you've got county roads running through a town, can the town tax the county? Or the state, right? State highways. If the state highway runs through your road,
I'm a little
federal.
rural town. I got a state highway running through, so, and Route 80. What do we do with Route 80?
Hey, you guys should see it now. Sorry about that.
You got it,
So
thanks.
has anyone formed a stormwater utility? And then I'll share it in about 30 seconds.
I still think some of the rules around this are not completely clear, and I think, John, those are, what do you do with the state and county roads? What about the highways? Right, because there's portions of certain highways that hit certain towns. How does all that work?
And do you take a cap-based adjustment because you're now moving your stormwater maintenance out of your operating budget?
Well, I would think you would have to, right? If you form a utility, that's what usually happens.
Yeah, but you're just doing as part of operations now. No. All right, 100% no, good.
I could have put a not sure. Maybe there's a chance some people aren't sure, but mostly, yeah, almost all. Thank you.
You got this one, Jason?
Yeah, I actually was going through this one a little bit earlier. So it's kind of interesting if you go back and look at this local finance notice, and I had pulled it up. Basically, this is just recodify, or really including now the ability to deal with third-party internet funds transfers for in-person transfers. So if somebody wants to pay their taxes, they can use one of these third-party check cashing companies to have the ability to transfer funds in person to pay, you know, their taxes. I'm not really thrilled with it. I have questions. I would say if this is something you're doing, just go back and look at that local finance notice. I didn't actually find it very clear myself. But it's more ways to allow people to meet their municipal obligations, to just open up the regs or open up the ability to use some of these other ways to make payments, right? We're in this world now with Venmo and various check cashing companies. So just the ability now to make sure that people can do that. I think talked a little bit about state supervision, just in terms of the budget. This is looking at the rules around how they're getting to state supervision now. The eligibility to be placed under state division supervision defines as a default on your debt, right? So if you default on your debt, the state's going to step in and you'll get a fiscal monitor and which includes failure to make funds on hand available for paying for debt service, right? So make sure that your debt service is included in your budget. And then also it's a cash flow issue, make sure the cash is on hand. The director actually has the authority to order a municipality under state supervision or to make disbursements in accordance with the adopted budget as applicable. So again, make sure it's kind of who's watching the store. Especially now with the comptroller's office and that oversight, there's just more scrutiny to make sure that we're doing the things that we're supposed to be doing to try and keep all of that outside of our town. You want to do the,
Again,
yeah,
I mean, they're focusing on the accumulated absence again. I mean, I'm sure everybody has read the report from the comptroller's office where they went after those 20 towns, and they went for another 20 towns. And he talked to some of the towns, and they're all arguing. They're saying that they're misinterpreting the two laws. 2007 was going after senior management. 2010 was going after everybody. But if you've been hired before May 21st, 2020, you weren't subject to the new rules, right? You could still have sick time payout. So, and again, it's that broad brush of misinterpreting what the rules really are. But I think we've all read enough about this one that it's been beating a dead horse, but it was in subchapter 15 and they're still going after it.
Yeah.
And they added to it now that now if you pay this out, that you need to do these 3 items, right? The amount that has been accrued and what it's made up of, the employee's hire date, and then if the employee is subject to accumulated absence restrictions, subject to the 2 laws. So you're now being required to address those in a payout. Not a bad thing. I mean, it's here. We just have to deal with it. And I think there were some different interpretations as to how to apply it. Some right, some wrong. Again, it's beating this dead horse of accumulated absence management and how you have to account for it. So just make sure that you're familiar with what's going on here. And again, more.
yeah.
That was a long one. I just kept copying and pasting. And then the last one is for John because it's an interesting one. Right, John? They want you to audit it, but you can't give an opinion on it.
Correct.
So isn't a recommendation or a finding an opinion?
Yes, well, yeah. And you know, this is what happens when your budget is adopted in April, but we're not coming out to do your audit until May. You know, now I gotta switch gears and get people out there to audit the accumulated absences. Yeah, but the fact that we're not required to opine, what's the point? It's just so that we can see it's here and say, all right, you know, these are the numbers that we were presented with. You know, so I don't know. There needs to be a little bit more on this one.
So then if your auditor writes you up on it, you turn them over to the comptroller's office for violating subchapter 15 because they formed an opinion.
Yeah, he's the first person I'll call.
That's all we have.
Nope.
Any questions? There's one up there.
I'll jump in and do the last poll, John, just before we
Oh, good. Okay.
close out. Okay, this question is, are CFOs required to have a surety bond? We went over this a few slides ago. I'll leave it open and share in a few seconds.
John's festive. He's got his Christmas tree up.
Yep,
Or is it a holiday tree?
it's a Christmas tree. It was always a Christmas tree. I'm not changing the name now. I'm too old for that.
Okay, you guys should see the results now. Okay, thank you.
Harry resolved her problem, so that's good. Is any town using Venmo or Zelle or PayPal? I don't know the answer to that. You guys know that?
I don't know. Nobody I've dealt with is doing that.
We have not seen, we've seen PayPal in a school a while ago, but we haven't seen PayPal in a school in a long time, so. but
I have a Venmo debit card, so I guess I could.
But it's a credit card.
But it's hooked to a Venmo
Electronic
account.
Yeah. But you're not wire transferring money via Venmo.
No.
Anyway, I do have a quick story. Really quick. I know someone who was in New York City maybe about a month ago and got mugged at 2 o'clock, 2:30 in the morning, and didn't have a lot of cash on him, but he had his cell phone on him. And Venmo and Zelle, what they do now is they don't even want your wallet. They just want to take your phone and make sure that you plug in your password to your phone, and they keep the phone on, they keep it open so it doesn't lock anymore. And there you go. You now have access to Venmo and Zelle and any other payment apps that might be on there, Amazon account. And guess what happens when you have two-factor authentication? Where does it come? It comes to your phone. So anywhere you might need two-factor authentication, they've got it right there in the palm of their hand. So just some food for thought. Tell them you don't have a cell phone. Give them your wallet.
Just smash your phone and take your
That's it.
meeting.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
We have any other questions before we end?
Don't see anything.
All right.
Fellas, thank you very much. Appreciate you coming out and doing this. All of our speakers, Steve, Jocelyn, we couldn't do this stuff without the people who come on and present with us. So thank you all to them. I think we had another successful roundtable here, and would just like to wish everybody happy holidays and just enjoy this time of year with family and friends. And we'll get together, give us some comments, give us some feedback on what topics we could be doing in the next year. I can't believe it's upon us already. What a fast year it was. So just say thank you again. And John, Jason, anything to add?
No, I think I'm good.
Thank you.
Thank you very
everyone.
much, everybody.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.